Chapter 1883. Rumble. In his pentashade imperial dragon form, Tianyun destroyed half of the main city with a stomp. Many guards were crushed under his stomp, and their corpses turned into star energy. He wasn't afraid of reinforcements coming from behind, but he would be able to level up if he killed the main characters here. Under such circumstances, what was there for him to be afraid of? The deacons and deputy city lords here were all star masters and star grandmasters, and they could obtain a large sum of star energy after killing them. Who dares to invade my star market city? At this moment, a huge phantom burst out from the depths of the main city. A huge purple phoenix soared into the sky and enveloped half of the main city. The moment it appeared, countless purple flames burned over, burning through the void. The deacons, who were scared witless, were overjoyed. The Violet Flame City Lord has come out. We're saved. The Violet Flame City Lord is a wanted criminal, a criminal with a unique star aspect. He even brought a group of slave star apostles here. His crime is unforgivable. That's right. Violet Flame City Lord, quickly burn him to death with your purple divine flames. They cried out when they saw the phantom, as if they had seen their savior. A mere birdman dares to be so impudent. The pentashade imperial dragon, who had returned to its original form, looked at the city lord with a disdainful gaze. It saw that the Violet Flame City Lord was covered in purple feathers, and he really had turned into half a phoenix. However, it was only half a phoenix, but it was still a huge birdman. Tianyun opened his mouth and sucked, like a whale swallowing. The purple fire was all sucked into his mouth, not leaving a single trace. Not to mention burning him, the flames even turned into nourishment for him. The Violet Flame City Lord was dumbfounded when he saw his flames being devoured. The deacons were also dumbfounded. That was a purple divine flame, and it was rumored that it could even burn through a higher-grade star aspect. Yet, it was devoured in one gulp, and it looked like it was enjoying itself. The taste of the flames is not bad, but it's still lacking. Tianyun coldly snorted. Get lost. Flapping his wings, he smashed the Violet Flame City Lord into the ground, his fate unknown. The Violet Flame City Lord was utterly defeated with a single move, leaving the deacons dumbfounded. This was their city lord, whose cultivation had reached the level of middle-stage Master Xing, suppressing a region. But now, he couldn't even last one move against his opponent. The Violet Flame City Lord lost? Fear surged in their hearts. Wouldn't this mean that Star-Forsaken City was going to fall? Since the main city had fallen, the remaining cities basically had no power to resist. That won't happen. The Violet Flame City Lord possesses the Violet Flame Divine Phoenix Star, a 4th-grade star Dharma idol. They can be reborn. It's impossible for them to die. The deacons immediately learned of the Violet Flame City Lord's strength and were certain that the Violet Flame City Lord would be fine. The Violet Flame City Lord flew out from the crater with the Violet Divine Flames frantically healing his injuries. Not only did he not weaken, but his aura had even grown stronger. As expected of a unique star Dharma idol, its might is extraordinary. But do you think you can kill me with your strength? I possess the Violet Flame Divine Phoenix Star, and I can be reborn as many times as I want. It's impossible for you to kill me. The Violet Flame City Lord swiftly turned into a streak of violet flame and slashed at Tianyun. He refused to believe that he couldn't injure Tianyun. Tianyun glanced at him indifferently, and without using too much strength, he raised his giant palm and pressed it down, still nothing too fancy. He didn't need to use his full strength against existences with such cultivation. Half of his strength was more than enough to suppress them. Go down. Boom. The Violet Flame City Lord was stomped on the ground. His astonishing speed was enough to win against many opponents, but it was ineffective against Tianyun. The Violet Flame City Lord was stomped on the ground without any chance to dodge. You can't kill me. The Violet Flame City Lord flew up from the ground and the Violet Divine Flames repaired his body once more. He was completely fine. Boom. The Violet Flame City Lord was stomped on the ground once more before he flew up and healed his body. Boom. Just when he got up, the Violet Flame City Lord was stomped on the ground once more. But not long after, the Violet Flame City Lord flew up once more and healed his body once more. However, the Violet Flame City Lord seemed to be in a worse state than before. Be it his recovery speed or aura, they were all weaker than before. You're pretty durable? Compared to Elder Si Ming, you're more durable. It looks like you're stronger than him. Elder Si Ming said that he's invincible and undying, but he was still stomped to death by me in the end. In the end, you were still trampled to death by me. I wonder how many times you can persevere? Yi Tianyun smiled as he stomped on the Violet Flame City Lord again, paying no attention to the Violet Flame City Lord's condition. The deacons were dumbfounded. The invincible Violet Flame City Lord was being beaten up? It was impossible for the Violet Flame City Lord to be undying. There was no such thing as an invincible being. As the Violet Flame City Lord continued to be stomped and healed, he would soon run out of energy. At the same time, the bloodline power in his body was also getting thinner. Every time he recovered, he would have to consume a large amount of energy and bloodline power, which couldn't be recovered in a short period. I'm undying. The Violet Flame City Lord crawled up from the ground. This time, he couldn't even fly anymore. The violet wings on his body were gone, and he looked like a featherless phoenix. It was a tragic sight to behold. This time, his recovery speed was extremely weak, and he would die after 1 or 2 more attacks. Then go to hell. In the end, Yi Tianyun stomped on the Violet Flame City Lord and killed him. The Violet Flame City Lord would never be able to stand up again, and he would no longer be able to fly and clash with Yi Tianyun like before. The Violet Flame City Lord is dead? They were shocked when they saw that the violet divine flames were no longer rising from the ground. Wasn't it said that the Violet Flame City Lord wouldn't die? Shortly after, Tianyun turned to look at the deacons in the city and his cold gaze pierced through them. The remaining deacons and guards were scared out of their wits and fled. Hurry up and run, this guy is a monster. Please don't kill me. I'm willing to surrender. I'm willing to surrender. Some chose to flee, some chose to surrender, but no one chose to resist. Even the Violet Flame City Lord, the strongest among them, was dead. What was the point of resisting? Yi Tianyun answered them with a simple word, and then he stepped on the void, and the remaining half of the main city was completely destroyed. He wouldn't accept any surrender. He could accept the surrender of those outside, but not those in the upper echelons. He would annihilate all of them. Chapter 1884. The main city was easily destroyed by Yi Tianyun, and the central city of Star G City was reduced to ruins just like that. All the guards and attendants were killed, and not a single one survived. This meant that they couldn't order the slave Star Apostles to do anything else. The Violet Flame City Lord is dead. Those who surrender will not be killed, but those who resist will be killed. Yi Tianyun stood on the ruins and used a loud and clear voice to spread in all directions. The power of the 5-colored monarch dragon made his voice filled with deterrence. Those with low cultivation immediately knelt down with their legs going soft, and they couldn't move at all. This was considered light. If his roar had been laced with lethality, they would definitely have exploded from it. How could those with low cultivation withstand the roar of a Star Master? However, he wasn't that brutal, and he didn't have much intention of killing the native cultivators who couldn't control the slave Star Apostles. Especially those with low cultivation, they wouldn't be harmed. The Violet Flame City Lord is dead? Isn't the Violet Flame City Lord invincible? How could he be dead? None of them dared to believe it, but they were all dumbfounded when they saw the corpse of the Violet Flame City Lord. Yi Tianyun dropped the corpse of the Violet Flame City Lord in the air, and anyone with a high cultivation would be able to see it from afar. Yi Tianyun had been using a simple and violent method to crush the corpse so that it could be used as a signal to conquer Star G City. Not only that, but it also made the hearts of the slave Star Apostles tremble, and their fighting spirit soared. They didn't expect that Yi Tianyun would destroy the main city of Star G City so quickly and even kill the City Lord. The City Lord had always been the master of the city. Since the City Lord had been killed, what could the rest of them do? I don't believe that he can kill all of us. I'm not afraid of him, and I'm not willing to be ruled by these trashy natives. At most, I'll just die. Some chose to surrender, while others chose to resist. The resistance was still strong, and they all charged forward without fear of Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun's eyes turned cold. He did not revert to his true self, but instead simply used his astral Dharma idol. A shadow pressed down, and a pile of flesh and blood was crushed. If you're not afraid of death, I'll kill until you're afraid. If you don't surrender, then kill them all. Yi Tianyun did not show any mercy. He turned around and killed the local star apostles who refused to surrender. Like a meat grinder, he crushed his way through and did not show any mercy. He would kill those who deserved to be killed without any mercy. Along the way, not to mention the Earth Star Apostles, even the houses in the vicinity were flattened. Such a terrifying power caused everyone to be dumbfounded. They had witnessed what true invincibility was. I'll say it one last time. Those who surrender will not be killed. Yi Tianyun roared, and his dragon roar reverberated throughout the entire Star G city, frightening everyone to the point that their faces turned pale. He really didn't show any mercy when he said he would kill them. Some of the people who originally wanted to resist chose to bow their heads in submission. Their bodies shivered, and they didn't dare to resist at all. My lord is invincible. Your excellency is invincible. All of them shouted invincible, and their hearts were filled with excitement. Seeing how easily Yi Tianyun suppressed Star G City, they sighed that they had really followed the right person. Even if they were to die in the next moment, they would be willing to do so. It was already good enough to be able to take revenge and slightly injure the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. After all, if it was before, they wouldn't even have the strength to resist, let alone take revenge. A single word would determine their life and death. The news of the suppression of Star G City quickly spread, shocking the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. One by one, the elders were so angry that they stomped their feet and threw their cups to curse. Where did this guy come from? How dare he attack our Star G City and destroy our mine? I didn't believe that it was from other forces before, but now I'm sure that this guy was definitely sent by other forces to cause trouble. Not only did he destroy our Thunder Shadow Palace, but he also destroyed the mine. Now, even Star G City has been captured. Could this guy be sent by our sworn enemy, the Divine Cauldron Ancestral Land? But that's not right. Even if the Divine Cauldron Ancestral Land sent someone to attack, they wouldn't send someone who had just obtained a unique Star Dharma idol, right? Aren't they afraid of dying here? Maybe it's an illusion. It's an illusion to deceive us. For example, using some method to suppress the Star Dharma idol and then release it, creating the illusion that he has just obtained the Star Dharma idol. What kind of method is this? Is there anyone who can do this? The elder felt embarrassed. He was really spouting nonsense. How would he know such a method? He had never seen a method that could suppress the Star Dharma idol. But if that's not the case, why would he attack our Empyrean Terminus ancestral land? What did we do to provoke him? He actually kept attacking us. They shook their heads. They really didn't know where Yi Tianyun came from and why he attacked them. They had never thought that he came from the lower realms. From the moment Yi Tianyun obtained his unique Star Dharma idol, no one would think that he came from the lower realms. This kind of stubborn logic had already been determined. There's no need to say anything more. No matter what force it is, it's a provocation to us. Chapter 1885. Yi Tianyun had no idea what was going on outside, but he knew that the news must have reached the inner circle. He was waiting to see what kind of expert the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land would send down. After killing this batch, it's almost time to set off. Yi Tianyun's eyes flickered. His current goal was to kill a group of higher-ups of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. If he were to fly over and exterminate them one by one, it would be too slow. There were so many cities. How long would it take for him to destroy all of them? The Empyrean Terminus ancestral land was quite spacious. With so many cities flying over at the same time, it would take countless years. Even though his cultivation was not weak, it would still take him a long time to go around them one by one. The best way was for them to gather a large number of experts and then ruthlessly destroy a group of them. This was the most time-saving and labor-saving method. This was his goal from the very beginning. If the matter was blown up, it would attract their attention and attract batches of experts over. Then they would be wiped out in one fell swoop. Help me call a star disciple called Deng Feng over. He's the one with the astonishing battle prowess from before. Yi Tianyun instructed the guard beside him to call someone over. The guard nodded and quickly ran off to find Deng Feng. Deng Feng was very easy to find. His previous performance had been very eye-catching, so it was very easy to find him. This was especially the case for Deng Feng. His name had already spread far and wide. With such powerful battle prowess, they couldn't help but be convinced. Soon, Deng Feng was summoned. When he entered, he cupped his fists and asked in confusion, "My lord, you were looking for me?" When Deng Feng was found, he was confused. He didn't know why Yi Tianyun was looking for him. He didn't know what he had that could attract Yi Tianyun's attention. Could it be his brute strength? However, he only had brute force. He didn't have many other abilities. His previous moves seemed rather clumsy here. Compared to the lower realms, it was quite strong, but compared to this place, it seemed extremely ordinary, completely unpresentable. Therefore, sometimes, it was better to just rely on one's fists, which might be slightly more powerful. If one's martial arts were not compatible with one's cultivation, not only would the effect not be enhanced, it would even be weakened. Therefore, it was better to just use one's fist. Using low-level martial arts was simply too unscientific. "Yes, I'm looking for you." Yi Tianyun looked at him with a smile. "Speaking of which, you and I are somewhat related. You can even be said to be my senior." "This? My lord, you absolutely cannot say that. You are much stronger than me, so how could I dare to call myself senior?" Deng Feng laughed self-deprecatingly. "If I were senior, I wouldn't have fallen to such a state." "Kai Yuan world," Yi Tianyun said simply. Deng Feng's pupils shrank as a cold light flitted through the depths of his eyes. However, it quickly disappeared. Seeing the smile on Yi Tianyun's face, he knew that the situation was not as simple as it seemed. Soon after, he thought for a moment and said in astonishment, "Could it be that you're from the Kai Yuan world, my lord?" He immediately thought of this. After all, he had never told anyone else that he was from the Kai Yuan world. Yet Yi Tianyun was able to tell that the world he came from was most likely from the Kai Yuan world. "That's right, I am indeed from the Kai Yuan world, so I can be considered your junior, and you are my senior." Yi Tianyun caught Deng Feng's killing intent in that instant, but he did not get angry. He knew why Deng Feng was like this. It was because he did not want others to enter his world. "My lord, you really are from the Kai Yuan world. This is too unbelievable." For a moment, he could not change his mind at all. This news was too shocking. A junior from the Kai Yuan world not only had a nature-defying star dharma, but his cultivation was also nature-defying, far surpassing his own. Logically, shouldn't those who came from the lower realm be miserable? Not only was it difficult for their cultivation to break through, but the slave mark alone was enough to suffocate them. It is indeed unbelievable, especially to be able to see you. Yi Tianyun looked him up and down. "You still don't have a star dharma? That shouldn't be the case. Your abilities are so strong. No matter how bad you are, you should have a star dharma." This is all they're doing. Deng Feng immediately explained the general situation. It was nothing more than the same as what had happened to Yi Tianyun before. After a slight inquiry about the slave mark, he was sentenced to the mines. At that time, he was even beaten up so badly that he was almost half crippled. If it were not for the fact that his physique was slightly stronger, he would have been dead for sure. "So that's how it is. No wonder you haven't awakened a star dharma?" Yi Tianyun nodded. He looked at him and said, "Then, Senior Deng Feng, are there any other seniors from the Kai Yuan world here? This is absolutely unacceptable. Please don't call me senior. I feel like it will shorten my lifespan." Deng Feng smiled bitterly. Being called senior by an expert who was far stronger than him was still too much for him to bear. "All right, Then I'll call you Brother Dengfeng. That should be fine, right? Yi Tianyun felt very helpless. This is acceptable. Dengfeng felt a little better. As for the other seniors, there is one, and that is the drug god. The drug god has a good foundation and a good physique, so he was selected as an internal star alchemist. His treatment is definitely much better, but he still has the slave mark. But this was a long time ago, so I don't know the details now. It seems that the drug god also came here. Yi Tianyun nodded. It is indeed not easy for us to survive the selection of the God Emperor. Yes, the selection of the God Emperor. Dengfeng clenched his fists and said coldly, "Damn the rules, damn the celestial terminus ancestral land. I have always wanted to exchange my body for freedom and then for the ownership of the Kai Yuan world." Who knew? His eyes were filled with killing intent. If he could, he really wanted to be like Yi Tianyun and flatten the celestial terminus ancestral land. However, his cultivation was too poor, his strength too weak, and he still had the slave mark. How could he take revenge? It was already good enough to survive, let alone take revenge. Indeed, the celestial terminus ancestral land is really disgusting, so I decided to destroy it. Yi Tianyun thought for a while before saying, "Since you haven't awakened the star Dharma power, there is a place here to awaken it. You can try it." In Starji City, there was naturally an altar for awakening the star Dharma power. They could not possibly go to the Thunder Shadow Palace to awaken the star Dharma power, right? All right. Dengfeng's eyes lit up. He had always wanted to try and see if he could awaken the star Dharma power, and now he finally had the chance. Immediately, they went directly to the awakening altar. This place was temporarily closed, and usually, people would come here to awaken the star Dharma power. Now that Starji City was ruled, those cultivators would naturally not come here to awaken. Go, let me see what kind of effect the first God Emperor of the Kai Yuan world will have. Yi Tianyun still had some expectations for Dengfeng. Chapter 1886. Yi Tianyun followed Dengfeng to the awakening altar. This awakening altar was much stronger than the one in the Thunder Shadow Palace. In comparison, the one in the Thunder Shadow Palace was much cruder and not as detailed. Generally speaking, the effects were about the same, and they could all be awakened. However, there were still some differences. For example, the energy here was sufficient, and there was a small effect of increasing the ability to sense the higher-level star aspect. Just this point alone was already miles ahead of the Thunder Shadow Palace. The main reason was that they thought that star apostles from the lower worlds could not have any high-level star aspect, so the awakening altar would be a little inferior. "We're here, let's go and try." Yi Tianyun gestured for Dengfeng to go and awaken the star aspect. "Okay." Dengfeng nodded heavily, clenched his fists, and walked forward, feeling a little nervous and perturbed. He had always been eager to obtain the star aspect, and now that he was ready to obtain it, he began to feel nervous. He was worried that he really could not awaken the star aspect, and that he was only a first-level star aspect. He had always felt that he was very outstanding, but at this moment, he stopped. He hesitated. He had been so eager before, but now he was hesitating. The main reason was that he could sense the gazes around him. In addition to the slave star apostles, there were other local cultivators walking around. The awakening altar was in the central area of Starji City, so the local cultivators could still see it. Although they had occupied Starji City, they did not restrict the activities of many people. They only restricted them from leaving the city. Therefore, they could only bear with it, walk around, and observe the situation. Now that they saw Dengfeng preparing to awaken the star aspect, their eyes were full of mockery, and they felt that Dengfeng could not obtain a high-level star aspect. Under these gazes, Dengfeng hesitated even more. "Dengfeng, what happened to your momentum of trampling the ancient sacred palace? Up until now, your deeds have always been spread in the origin god domain, and all of them admire your imposing aura of bravery." Yi Tianyun said in a low voice behind him, "If you are stuck here, it can only mean that you have forgotten who you were back then." Dengfeng did not turn his head to look behind him. Instead, he raised his head and looked forward. A sharp light flashed in the depths of his eyes, and a domineering aura surged out from the depths of his eyes, washing away all the years of forbearance he had endured. He had endured for so many years that he had lost the courage he had in the beginning. Now that Yi Tianyun mentioned it, the domineering aura buried deep within him was released once again. That's right, I'm the first God Emperor of the Kai Yuan world. Even if I'm nothing here, at least I've never been afraid. Even if I didn't awaken the stellar aspect, I believe that I can still stand here. Deng Feng clenched his fists. At this moment, he was no longer confused. He lifted his foot and walked toward the awakening altar. As soon as he stepped in, he immediately drew the power of the awakening altar over. In an instant, light soared into the sky and pierced into the sea of stars. This ray of light was like a sharp sword. It pierced through 2-star regions and entered the rank 3-star region in one breath. Immediately, the surrounding cultivators were dumbfounded. He rushed to the rank 3 celestial region in one go. This meant that no matter how weak he was, he still had a rank 3 stellar aspect. However, all of this was not over. The incomparably fierce ray of light once again moved forward and broke through the rank 4-star region. However, it did not stop there. The light that could destroy everything continued to move forward. Finally, when it rushed to the rank 5-star region, it became extremely slow and could not continue to move forward. It was a rank 5 stellar aspect. Deng Feng had chosen a good stellar aspect. At the same time, he had fixed his rank at the rank of a rank 5 stellar aspect, an extremely talented level. At least in the celestial terminus ancestral land, only the celestial terminus lord could compare to him. A rank 5 stellar aspect. These lowly natives actually have a rank 5 stellar aspect. That's impossible, right? That's impossible. Doesn't that mean that he has already reached the level of the celestial terminus lord? How can such a lowly life form have such a strong stellar aspect? Something must have gone wrong. None of them were willing to admit the facts in front of them. In the entire celestial terminus ancestral land, there were still a few with a rank 5 stellar aspect. However, they were all at the level of the celestial terminus lord or the great elder. They were all at the rank of a rank 5 stellar aspect. As for a rank 6 stellar aspect, it was too difficult to obtain. At least, there was not a single one here. Otherwise, they would not have been crazy enough to try to rope in Yi Tianyun. A unique stellar aspect was even more amazing than a rank 6 stellar aspect. However, it could not be said that the gap between the two was extremely shocking. The two were considered to be on par with each other, but there was still a gap. A rank 6 stellar aspect was very strong and amazing. It could not be said that the two could not be compared. A rank 6 stellar aspect could still beat a unique stellar aspect. Everything depended on the compatibility and the effect of one's own use. A unique stellar aspect had a great advantage. For example, being unique was a great advantage. There was no similar ability. A unique stellar aspect was very strong, but it did not mean that it was absolutely invincible. This was similar to a self-created martial art. It did not mean that it was much better than those martial arts that had been passed down for thousands of years. Everything depended on one's own potential and future situation. However, in terms of creation, a unique stellar aspect was indeed much stronger. Swoosh! With a wave of his hand, Yi Tianyun slapped the noisy passers-by into a meat patty. He would not let go of this kind of gossip. There was a saying that went, "Trouble comes from the mouth." Since he had said it, he had to bear the corresponding price. A rank 5 stellar aspect is really not bad. Yi Tianyun's eyes lit up. He did not expect Deng Feng to obtain a rank 5 stellar aspect. He had originally thought that he would only obtain a rank 3 stellar aspect. Now, it seemed that he had been wrong. After a while, Deng Feng walked out of the awakening altar in high spirits. A rank 5 stellar aspect, not bad. Deng Feng grinned. It seems that I have some talent. Isn't that for sure? You are the first God Emperor of the Kaiyuan world. The fact that you were the first to cultivate to become an God Emperor is enough to prove how strong you are. Yi Tianyun smiled. It's just that this slave imprint is still not broken. Deng Feng shook his head. This was the saddest thing about him. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed. If he had failed, Deng Feng would definitely not have died. The rank 5 stellar aspect would have been used. How could such a strong talent let Deng Feng die? At this moment, the 5-colored emperor dragon in his body jumped slightly. It seemed to have some reaction. Chapter 1887. Yi Tianyun could clearly feel that the 5-colored emperor dragon was jumping a little, as if it had sensed something. Previously, when he mentioned the slave mark, the 5-colored emperor dragon had jumped a little. Before this, there was actually a slight reaction, but it wasn't much. Hence, he did not think much of it. Now that there was a reaction, he could not help but wonder if the 5-colored emperor dragon could help remove the slave mark. It was all thanks to the 5-colored emperor dragon that he was able to suppress the slave mark. If it had not been for its help, he would have been branded with the slave mark. Slave mark, maybe I can give it a try. Yi Tianyun squinted his eyes and smiled at Deng Feng. Come with me first. Let's try this. Deng Feng did not suspect anything and left with Yi Tianyun, leaving behind a group of dumbfounded cultivators. The news of a level 5 star Dharma idol would definitely spread throughout Star G City. In fact, there was no need for word of mouth. Most people had seen it. After all, the awakening altar was in the central area. They could see the phenomenon. Perhaps it was not as domineering as the unique star Dharma idol, but it could still be seen in this area. The unique star Dharma idol was really widespread. It could even be said that many forces had seen it. It had a very wide influence. Deng Feng followed Yi Tianyun to a cultivation room. He looked puzzled. He did not know why Yi Tianyun had brought him here. Brother Tianyun, what's wrong? Deng Feng asked doubtfully. I want to try to remove your slave mark, Yi Tianyun said simply. What? Deng Feng was stunned. He looked at Yi Tianyun in disbelief. After a while, he said excitedly, Is this true? If they could remove the slave mark, they would really be free. They would not have to worry about being controlled. I have not tried this before, so I will give it a try first. Yi Tianyun smiled and said, To tell you the truth, I do not have a slave mark. After all, we both came up from the lower worlds. You have a slave mark, but why don't I? This is all thanks to the unique star Dharma idol. That is why I do not have a slave mark. There's even such an effect? It's really strange. Deng Feng was shocked. Don't worry, just try. At the very least, I won't be able to remove the slave imprint. You can try however you want. If you really can remove it, a hint of ruthlessness appeared in the depths of Deng Feng's eyes. When the time comes, I'll definitely kill them. I won't have to worry about being controlled. Without the slave imprint, things were much easier. Not to mention fighting them head-on, they would sneak up on them from time to time and then hide. By doing so, they could slowly whittle down the enemy's forces. Of course, the most important thing is that there are so many star apostles. If they can all be freed, then the celestial core ancestral land will definitely be thrown into chaos. Deng Feng laughed. When he thought of that scene, he would definitely explode. The Empyrean Terminus ancestral land had more than 10 million star apprentices after so many years. It was even possible that there were more than 100 million star apprentices. Some of them didn't have weak cultivations. Reaching the Star Master rank could be found everywhere. As for the Star Master rank, perhaps there wasn't a single one. However, just the number of Star Masters alone was enough to cause chaos in the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. From a loyal slave to a terrifying rebel army, Celestial Terminus Lord would not be able to sleep well. Ahem, we haven't tried this yet. Don't be so hasty to make a conclusion. Yi Tianyun almost believed it himself. They hadn't even tried it, yet they were already bragging so wildly. Even he felt that it was very feasible. That's true. I'm thinking too much. Deng Feng smiled embarrassedly. He had only thought that in such a situation, the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land would definitely be overthrown. Even if they couldn't be overthrown, they would at least be able to greatly damage the vitality of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. Let's try it now. We'll know once we try. Yi Tianyun raised his hand and reached into the void. The 5-colored emperor dragon in his body began to move. Then, a five-colored divine light shrouded Dengfeng. Immediately after, the divine light seeped into Dengfeng's soul. With a flash of divine light, the slave imprint on Dengfeng's soul quickly disappeared. In less than a moment, the slave imprint completely disappeared. It wasn't difficult at all. Success! Yi Tianyun was stunned. He didn't expect to erase Dengfeng's slave imprint so easily. As for the consumption, it was almost negligible. This meant that he could easily erase all slave imprints and liberate a group of slaves. Yes, it really succeeded. Dengfeng's heart skipped a beat. He really didn't expect to be able to remove the imprint so easily. The nightmare that had been haunting him for a long time was instantly removed. He felt his whole body relax. There was no longer that disgusting burden. Very good. Now, let's start to secretly gather a group of slave star apostles and remove the slave imprint. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed. There was a scheming smile at the corner of his mouth. Okay, let's do that. Dengfeng understood what Yi Tianyun wanted to do. He just wanted to gather a group of slaves and remove the slave imprint secretly to avoid being discovered by other cultivators. At that time, he would definitely be informed, and those elders would know. At that time, there would definitely be chaos. The appearance of an existence that could remove the slave imprint would definitely cause panic in the celestial terminus ancestral land. At that time, they would immediately send all the experts over to suppress them. To put it bluntly, slave star apostles were the foundation of their labor force. Now, regardless of whether it was expanding territory, planting spiritual medicine, or mining, they mainly relied on slave star apostles. The cultivators who participated in this were only a small portion, and the number was not large. Hence, if slave star apostles were gone, their resources would immediately be greatly reduced. Under such circumstances, how could they tolerate the existence of Yi Tianyun? At that time, not to mention going crazy, they would go completely crazy. Following a group of slave star apostles, they would leave with a solemn expression. No one knew what had happened. Yi Tianyun was not worried that they would leak the secret. They were originally extremely hostile to the celestial terminus ancestral land, so they naturally wouldn't betray him. While removing the slave imprints, he also gave them some plans. Everything was arranged perfectly by him. All that was left was the final push. Very soon, all the slave star apostles had their slave imprints removed. After removing the imprints, Yi Tianyun heaved a sigh of relief. There was a little consumption, but it was not much overall. If he hadn't concealed the situation, he could really have freed a large number of slave star apostles in one go. The plan has been laid out, it's beyond my expectations. Yi Tianyun said with a smile as he turned his head and looked behind him. He saw a group of elite experts looking at him with admiration and gratitude. Chapter 1888. The Empyrean Terminus ancestral land moved quickly and soon arrived at Star Zero City. Since it took some time to gather them, it took a long time. However, no matter how long it took, they could reach the remote Star G City within half a month. This was considered an ideal speed. In fact, they could be faster, but this speed was still too slow. If they took half a month to reach Star Zero City in an emergency, it could only mean that the situation was very bad. In half a month, they could flatten Star Zero City a few times, let alone flatten it. This was not an exaggeration. With just a few star apostles, they could flatten the city several times in half a month without any resistance. The current situation was ideal, but it was only ideal compared to normal times. This was the consequence of being too arrogant. Since such a thing had never happened before, they were naturally very slow in dealing with it. After all, they thought that there would be no internal problems, and even if there were external enemies attacking, they would immediately know the situation and quickly defend themselves. However, they did not make many preparations internally, which led to an internal collapse. "We're here." Elder Hongda landed outside Star Zero City on a star boat with a group of experts. Behind Elder Hongda and Elder Vermilion Dragon was a group of Godslayer team members who looked stern and murderous. The Godslayer team was the elite of the elites of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. They were all covered in black robes, and their cultivation bases were at the early stage of the Star Master level. Apart from the words, God's Slayer, imprinted firmly on their backs, they couldn't see anything else. They could only feel the terrifying and horrifying murderous intent. All enemies of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land would be killed. We're finally here. If that kid hasn't escaped, he's dead. Elder Vermilion Dragon sneered. He brought so many slaves with him. When the time comes, he will be drowned by them as soon as we give the order. He will find that all the slaves he brought with him have harmed him in the end. Elder Vermilion Dragon felt extremely refreshed as he imagined that scene in his mind. They were not worried about the lives of these slaves. If they died, they died. Who asked them to betray him? They would not kill these traitors, but let the slave Star Apostles counterattack and let Yi Tianyun have a taste of what it was like. That's right, a bunch of good-for-nothings. We fed them for so many years, and in the end, they betrayed us. Elder Dahong coldly snorted and said, After we deal with that kid, we'll make these traitors work for us to the death. Naturally, they wouldn't kill them. There was no point in killing them. It was just that this group of slaves had worked hard for them, and they would directly kill them. Not only would he be able to make an example out of them, but he would also be able to work for him. Why not? Well said, let's do that. With a chuckle, Elder Vermilion Dragon jumped out of the star boat and flew directly into Star Zero City. They didn't sneak into the city, but swaggered in, not fearing that they would be ambushed. In their opinion, what kind of storm could these pieces of trash cause? Yi Tianyun was the only person he needed to be wary of. The rest didn't matter. Just when they thought there were no more problems, several beams of divine light suddenly shot up from below and condensed at a single point. After they condensed together, they erupted with the strongest power, comparable to Grandmaster Xing's powerful attack. The sudden attack caught the two elders off guard. By the time they blocked it, it was already a little too late, and they were sent flying. Even the team of God Slayer behind them didn't have time to react and were hit by the divine light. We hit them, we hit them. The large number of Star Apostles lying in ambush were extremely surprised. After practicing for a period of time, they were able to condense all of their power into a single point. One could imagine how powerful the attack of hundreds of thousands of Star Apostles was when they gathered together. They were all top cultivators from the mortal world, and their control of power was no weaker than that of the local cultivators. When they gathered together, their power was astonishing, and they were hit in one fell swoop. It shouldn't have been so easy, but the other party's carelessness had allowed them to succeed. A bunch of trash. Not only did they betray us, but they also dared to attack us. Two figures rushed out of the pillar of light, and a huge shadow appeared behind them. It was a large Star Dharma form. They all took out their own Star Dharma forms. Elder Dahong's Star Dharma form was a large golden snake, and Elder Vermilion Dragon's was a water dragon. Both Star Dharma forms were at the 4th level, and they were of a relatively high level. Although they had taken out their Star Dharma forms, they were still in a sorry state. The sudden attack caught them off guard, and they were almost seriously injured. If it wasn't for the fact that they had some abilities and the defensive equipment they were wearing, they would have been able to withstand the attack. However, the team of God Slayer behind them weren't so lucky. They were in a sorry state, and some of them were seriously injured by the attack. They fell to the ground in midair and couldn't move. Most of them were fine, and they were only slightly injured. However, they all displayed their own Star Dharma powers. Just like the elders, they all displayed their own Star Dharma powers. It was just that the level of their Star Dharma powers was relatively low. All of them were only at the 2nd level, and the highest was only at the 3rd level. Not only were the team of God Slayer injured, but their real faces were also exposed. Upon closer inspection, they realized that there were many star patterns engraved on their bodies, and they looked like slave marks. The difference was that their souls and bodies were engraved, and it was difficult for them to break free under the double suppression. It was basically impossible for them to break free, unless someone helped them. The Star Apostles were shocked to see this. The famous team of God Slayer was made up of cultivators from the lower worlds. This made the local cultivators dumbfounded. All along, the team of Godslayer was like the god of death, and they were not afraid of death. They were proud of themselves, and now they suddenly realized that the team of Godslayer was made up of cultivators from the lower worlds. They were dumbfounded. The team of Godslayer is made up of cultivators from the lower worlds. How can this be? This is unbelievable. Didn't they say that cultivators from the lower worlds are very weak? Their worldview was turned upside down. They had never thought that this would happen. The important thing was that the team of Godslayer flew up silently. The only way they could express their true feelings was by crying silently. Only these tears were not controlled by the slave marks. The rest of them were controlled by the slave marks and couldn't move. They now knew why the team of Godslayer wore black robes. They didn't want the world to know that the team of Godslayer was made up of cultivators from the lower worlds. Chapter 1889. The local cultivators could not accept the situation of the God extermination team. Even the slave star apostles could not accept it. They had thought that it would be a good thing to be able to kill the God extermination team from the celestial pole ancestral land. How could they not be happy to be able to injure the God extermination team? This was the strongest team from the celestial pole ancestral land. Even the weakest of them was a star master. Just the number of people that Elder De Hong and the others brought was 8, representing 8 star grandmasters. Who would have thought that after removing his disguise, he would actually be a cultivator from the lower realm? Perhaps they did not come from the same world, but they had the same hatred. This basically defined them as friends. Since they had the same enemy, they were naturally friends. How could they accept that the God extermination team had injured their own people? The local cultivators could not accept it. They had always thought that the God extermination team was made up of their elite disciples. Now they realized that this was not the case. The God extermination team was made up of cultivators from the mortal world. They had always treated the God extermination team as the main force and heroes. Now they were feeling very complicated. Damn it, we have been discovered. Elder Hongda and the rest were furious. They had never thought that the God extermination team would be exposed. They had hidden it well all this while because they did not want them to know that the God extermination team was made up of cultivators from the mortal world. To them, cultivators from the mortal world were loyal and not afraid of death. Even if he was dead, he was dead. It didn't matter. After all, the members of the God extermination team had slowly accumulated their strength. They had seen some cultivators from the mortal world lock up all kinds of slave imprints after they had broken through to the mortal world. How could they waste such cheap combat power? Especially these cultivators from the mortal world. They had not been given many resources on purpose. They had slowly accumulated their strength and then broken through. Needless to say, it was difficult. But just when they thought that they had made a breakthrough, it brought a cruel ending. They had been reduced to the most tragic slaves and were even used as death warriors. Great Elder Yao Yuan, who had first suggested this situation, was highly praised. They all felt that his suggestion was very good. This kind of reserve force would save them a lot of resources. They would also have an additional group of death warriors. As for their own geniuses, they would definitely keep them and spend more resources on them. As men of sacrifice, the fact that their faces were covered in tears was the best proof. They were all crying, unable to control themselves. Everything they did was out of their control. They didn't know how many of their companions they had killed, but they couldn't resist. If they could, they would all choose to commit suicide by self-detonation. Unfortunately, they couldn't even commit suicide. They would become their slaves until the day they died. For a moment, the star apostles below did not know whether to attack or not. As the team leader, Deng Feng turned to look at Yi Tianyun, wanting to see what Yi Tianyun had to say. Yi Tianyun shook his head, indicating that everything would go according to plan. The current situation was somewhat unexpected. The famous Godslayer team was actually a cultivator from the lower realm. This was indeed disgusting. As long as this matter was publicized, the slave star apostles would definitely go berserk. His cultivation had broken through to Master Xing. Logically speaking, his status was astonishing. But here, He was even worse than a dog, and continued to be controlled. What happened to freedom? Everything was empty. How disgusting. How could you say that you would give them freedom? You can't even accumulate enough military merits to become a master Shing? Lee Tianyun stood at the highest point and sneered. From the beginning, the Empyrean Terminus Ancestral Land never intended to let these star apostles go. You wanted to use them until the day they died, and you never chose to let them go. They were stunned, but Elder Hongda and the others were not. They could only walk away angrily. I order you to kill him. Elder Hongda pointed at Yi Tianyun and ordered the star apostles to attack Yi Tianyun. Kill him. A group of star apostles rushed toward Yi Tianyun, as Elder Hongda had ordered. They were going to kill Yi Tianyun. The star apostles, who had been standing not far behind Yi Tianyun, raised their weapons and charged toward Elder Hongda. The crowd of star apostles changed from attacking Elder Hongda and the others to attacking Yi Tianyun. Hundreds of thousands of star apostles continued to rush toward Elder Hongda, and their numbers were enough to engulf Yi Tianyun. Despicable! Tianyun yelled, fight me if you can, don't give me such a disgusting order. Fight with you? Elder Dahong sneered and said, that's fine. You can have a good fight with these traitors first. After you survive, you can fight with us. I'll let you know how stupid you are when you go to hell. Yi Tianyun gritted his teeth and dodged the attacks of the star apostles, while flying toward Elder Hongda. However, he was surrounded by another group of star apostles as soon as he arrived. He could not attack them, and could only dodge left and right to avoid their attacks. Haha, you still don't want to attack? Are these pieces of trash your relatives? Why are you so reluctant to attack them? Elder Vermilion Dragon and the others smiled when they saw this. In that case, you can enjoy it. Let's see how long you can last without killing them. They wanted to see this kind of scene. They wanted to see Yi Tianyun's desperate expression. They did not know why Yi Tianyun had saved these slaves, but they did not need to know. They only needed to see Yi Tianyun being tortured to death, or to see Yi Tianyun killing the slaves. That would also satisfy them. Anyway, as long as they destroyed Yi Tianyun's plan and made Yi Tianyun suffer, they would feel very happy. After making trouble in the Empyrean Terminus Ancestral Land for so long, it was the best way to make Yi Tianyun suffer for a while before killing him. When they thought that Yi Tianyun was struggling between life and death, Yi Tianyun kept charging toward them with groups of star apostles. Oh, you want to charge over and kill us? Elder Hongda said with a smile, you are quite capable to be able to hide for so long. However, you won't be able to hide very soon. More and more slaves swarmed over and surrounded Yi Tianyun. If this went on, there would be no place for him to hide. However, when they got closer, these star apostles suddenly launched their strongest attacks at Elder Dahong and the others, with Yi Tianyun as the center. They attacked almost at the same time, including Yi Tianyun. They all attacked Elder Dahong and the others fiercely. Everything happened too suddenly, 100 times faster than before. As a result, they didn't even have the chance to block it, especially when the distance between them was relatively close. A single attack was launched at them. Boom! An earth-shattering blow erupted, and the two of them were blown to the point of disappearing without a trace. Chapter 1890. After the explosion, the two great elders were seriously injured, and their bodies were in a half-crippled state. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that they would be attacked by these traitors. When they were so close to them, they launched a series of fierce attacks, causing them to be bombarded on a large scale without even having the time to defend themselves. Under the fierce attacks of so many cultivators, even an ant could bite an elephant to death. This was the reason why they were so easily beaten up by so many star apostles, which made them feel very liberated. They had been repressed for so long. Although Star G City could help them vent a little, it was undoubtedly more liberating to be able to seriously injure these higher-ups. This was one of Yi Tianyun's plans. He wanted to let them vent their anger, which would also boost their morale. He could deal with the two of them alone, but this way, they would not be able to vent their anger. This was the only way they could be more united. If they were united, it would not be difficult to overthrow the celestial pole ancestral land. He still needed their help to resolve a lot of things. Hence, it would be easier to get things done if he allowed them to regain some confidence. Although it would expose the fact that they did not have the slave imprint, it would be exposed in the end. Hence, it was not a big deal to expose it now. Lee Dong-yun quickly came to their side. Without waiting for them to struggle, he stepped down from the sky and crushed their bodies into powder again, leaving only their heads behind. Then, he quickly extended his hand and sealed their powers. It would be extremely difficult for them to recover their bodies. Elders, aren't you two quite awe-inspiring? Lee Dong-yun lifted their heads and looked at them with a light smile. How does it feel to be like this? Your lives are already in my hands. How can this be? Don't they have the slave imprint? How did they lose control? The two of them were extremely shocked. All along, the slave imprint was what they relied on to make these slaves behave themselves. Now, it had turned into a counterattack, which made them feel very shocked. Well, I'm not too sure about this. Lee Dong-yun smiled faintly and did not explain anything. Kill him, quickly kill him for me. Elder De Hong suddenly shouted as if he had thought of something. Immediately, the members of the god-slaying team who could move immediately unleashed their strongest power. The power of Master Xing's early stage was released in all directions, causing the cultivators to kneel on the ground and find it hard to move. Grandmaster Xing was Grandmaster Xing. How could a mere star disciple compare to him? Lee Tianyun stretched out his hand and crushed Elder De Hong's head. As long as he killed the one who gave the order, the slaves would naturally stop attacking. In fact, after killing Elder De Hong, the God Extermination team didn't stop attacking. They continued to release their strongest hostility towards Lee Tianyun. Haha, it's useless. They are not like the other slaves. As long as they are given an order, unless someone else changes the order, they must carry out the corresponding order. Elder Zhu Long laughed loudly. Even if he was trapped, he would still laugh loudly. For him, at least before he dies, he can make a comeback. He can make Lee Tianyun suffer a lot. Is that so? Lee Dong-yun smiled as he stretched out his hand. The five-colored Emperor Dragon appeared behind him and a few rays of divine light enveloped the members of the God Extermination team. They instinctively tried to block it, but it was useless. The divine light easily penetrated their shields and attacked their souls. At the same time, they started to erase their slave imprints. Even the slave imprints on the surface of their bodies were quickly erased. As there were many slave imprints, it would take some time to erase them. Lee Tianyun could only take Elder Zhu Long's head and quickly hide in all directions. An astonishing wind attribute surrounded his body and they couldn't even touch the hem of his clothes. It was undeniable that they were very powerful, but Lee Tianyun was even more powerful. With the help of the five-colored Emperor Dragon, he could crush anyone at the same level as him. The slave imprints have disappeared. What kind of ability is this? You can actually erase the slave imprints. Elder Zhu Long shouted in disbelief. He couldn't believe that Lee Tianyun had such an ability. In their opinion, as long as one wasn't an extremely powerful star rune master, it would be difficult to erase the slave imprints. Even a decent star rune master would need a long time to erase the slave imprints. But now, it was being erased at an even faster speed. Such a shocking speed was really shocking. How is it? Do you think it's okay? Lee Tianyun continued to hide. Based on this situation, erasing their slave imprints wouldn't be too difficult. It would just take a little more time. Could it be that the reason why these slaves can't be controlled is because you've erased the slave imprints? Elder Zhu Long looked at him in shock. Fear filled the depths of his eyes. He was afraid that the celestial terminus ancestral land would be in chaos. Without the slave imprints to control them, there would definitely be riots. It seems that you're not stupid. You still know the situation. Lee Tianyun smiled faintly. However, you should have guessed what will happen next. All the slaves in the celestial terminus ancestral land will be liberated. When that time comes, I wonder what will happen to the celestial terminus ancestral land. No! You can't do this, you damned lunatic! Elder Zhu Long screamed. He didn't want to see the celestial terminus ancestral land meet such an end. "I think you're the lunatics. You'll have to pay for what you've done." Lee Tianyun sneered. He waved his hand and shouted, "Unseal me!" Divine light illuminated the world. The slave imprints on the godly extermination team disappeared completely. Their attacks also disappeared. They were all stunned on the spot. They realized that they could control themselves freely. They weren't being controlled by force anymore. We were out of control. They looked at their hands and flipped them casually. Tears gushed out of their eyes. They immediately looked up to the sky and shouted, "We're free! We're free!" They roared continuously, venting the anger and sorrow in their hearts. Previously, when they were being controlled, they couldn't even shout, let alone control themselves. They could only be mutes. But now, it was different. They were completely liberated and could control themselves. "Look, the slave imprints have been unsealed." Lee Tianyun saw the fear in Elder Zhu Long's eyes. "By the way, there is another secret that I want to tell you. Actually, I'm not from any force. I came up from the lower domain. Now, you know why I'm doing this, right? Not only do I want to destroy you, but I also want to flatten the celestial terminus ancestral land." Chapter 1891. Elder Vermilion Dragon was in fear and disbelief before he died. He really didn't believe that Lee Tianyun came from the lower realm. The lower realm generally had level 1 or 2 Star Dharma avatars. How could there be a unique Star Dharma avatar? The most terrifying thing was the existence that could solve the slave imprint. This seemed to have appeared to retaliate against them. After Lee Tianyun appeared, everything would probably change. After all the slaves of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land were liberated, everything would fall into darkness. This was not nonsense, it was the truth. There were more than 10 million slaves in the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. Hundreds of millions of slaves had been suppressing their anger for a long time. After all of them were vented, great changes would occur. The combined forces might not be able to suppress the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land, but they would at least suffer heavy losses if they fought head-on. Once they suffered heavy losses, the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land would definitely fall into crisis. With so many forces eyeing them covetously, the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land would definitely be occupied. If everything had been treated well, not to mention being given excellent treatment, this kind of ending would not have happened. However, there were no ifs. The matter was already a foregone conclusion. The Empyrean Terminus ancestral land thought that there would be no mistakes, which was why they were so ruthless. At the same time, they were ruthlessly exploiting them, wanting to save all kinds of costs. The Empyrean Terminus ancestral land would laugh at the other forces, thinking that the other forces were fools. What was the point of treating these cultivators from the lower realms so fairly? They could directly enslave them for their own use, which was loyal and didn't cost any resources. But now, a strange person like Lee Tianyun had appeared, and no one knew that this situation would happen. Before Elder Vermilion Dragon died, he still knew the real situation, but he would die with endless regret and unwillingness. Even if Lee Tianyun couldn't defeat the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land, he would slowly cause trouble everywhere and continue to liberate the slaves around. At that time, it would definitely cause chaos, causing the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land to fall into chaos. This was what he was worried about, and it would happen soon. After Lee Tianyun crushed Elder Vermilion Dragon's head, he turned his head and looked around, seeing a group of cultivators looking at him in a daze. These local cultivators were dumbfounded. They didn't expect that Lee Tianyun could remove the slave imprint. This ability was simply a godly skill. From their point of view, the slave imprint was something difficult to undo. But now, he was able to undo the slave mark, and did it with such ease. All of them were stunned. They all knew what this meant. This meant that all slaves would no longer be slaves, but would become free. Some of the local cultivators who looked down on them began to panic. What would happen if they were all liberated? Lee Tianyun knew that this would expose his abilities, but he had no other choice. There were so many Grandmasters Xing excluding those who couldn't move before. There were at least 6 Grandmasters Xing who were in excellent condition. Especially in a situation where the order could not be changed, he could only choose to break it, unlike the other slaves who quietly undid their slave imprints. Being exposed was something that couldn't be helped. Moreover, there were 8-star Grandmasters. No matter what, it was worth it. How could it not be worth it to suddenly gain 8 extremely powerful experts? Although they all knew that the slave imprints of the cultivators in the lower realm had disappeared, they didn't know how it had disappeared. Perhaps they wouldn't suspect Yi Tianyun. With the current situation, Yi Tianyun is sure that he can get rid of the slave imprint. Thank you, benefactor. If you have any requests, please let us know. As long as we can do it, we will definitely help you achieve it. The members of the God of Destruction team who could move came over and knelt on one knee to express their deepest gratitude. If it wasn't for Yi Tianyun, they would have completely turned into killing machines. No one could stop them. Get up. I don't want to say anything unnecessary. I just want to ask you to do something for me. Yi Tianyun looked at them with burning eyes and said, that is to follow us and destroy the ancestral land of the Celestial Pole. At the same time, we will liberate the rest of the slaves. How about it? The members of the God of Destruction team looked at each other and saw endless surprise in each other's eyes. Then they nodded and knelt in front of Yi Tianyun. They said in a determined tone, we will follow our benefactor until the end. Their biggest wish now was to destroy the ancestral land of the Celestial Pole. Since Yi Tianyun had asked them to do this, they must have sworn to follow him until the end. Even if they had to die in battle, they would be willing. After being imprisoned for so long and doing so many things that they didn't want to do, they also didn't want to see the other cultivators from the lower realm suffer the same treatment. Therefore, they were willing to be the first to fight against the ancestral land of the Celestial Pole. Okay. Tell me the general distribution of the slaves, especially the ones that slaughtered God Destroyer team like you. Let us save them, Yi Tianyun said with a smile. To conquer the ancestral land of the Celestial Pole, they would need many powerful experts. For example, the combat power of the God of Destruction team was very much in line with Yi Tianyun's requirements. Perhaps he could rush to the ancestral land alone and destroy the main ancestral land of the Celestial Pole. However, if he wanted to completely conquer the ancestral land, he would need to occupy it from all sides. He couldn't do it alone. What he needed now was to occupy it from all sides. Only then would he be able to welcome the final liberation. Destroying the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land would be the best liberation. Ding. Successfully accepted the advanced main mission, destroy the ancestral land of the Celestial Pole. Reward, 10 million star energy points, system enhancement, prerequisite mission must be completed for effect. The main mission that popped up made Yi Tianyun's eyes light up. It seemed that he had accepted a good main mission. It seems that the system wants to destroy the ancestral land of the Celestial Pole. Since I haven't completed the main mission, it probably won't be displayed immediately. Yi Tianyun felt that if he had completed the main mission earlier, it would have been displayed immediately when he came here. It's just that I don't know how long it'll take to complete the main mission. Yi Tianyun frowned. He didn't know if the reward would be reserved if he completed the main mission ahead of time. If there were no reservations, then he would really want to cry but have no tears. It would be a waste of an opportunity. He didn't know what the system enhancement was, but it was definitely something good. Forget it, let's destroy the ancestral land of the Celestial Pole first. Yi Tianyun didn't want to wait too long. If he delayed any longer, he was afraid that other unexpected things would happen. He immediately started a meeting. He wanted to understand the internal situation of the ancestral land in detail. For example, he wanted to know how many other God of Destruction teams were left. They were all Master Xing after all, and they would be able to strengthen his side by a lot. It was a pity that only 2 elders had come. It would have been better if more had come. Killing 2 elders and the God of Destruction team would have been very profitable for him. Chapter 1892. Yi Tianyun had a general idea of the distribution, especially the situation of the God Extermination team. The god extermination team had a lot of members. There were almost 100 of them. This meant that there were almost 100 Star Masters. It had to be said that this was a very strong team. Ironically, it was made up of cultivators from the lower worlds. The strength of this team could not be ignored in the entire celestial terminus ancestral land. They were much stronger than the average team. It could be said that they were one of the best in the celestial terminus ancestral land. It was especially awkward here, especially after knowing the truth. Yi Tianyun did not stop the news from spreading. He allowed it to spread. Moreover, he could not stop the news from spreading. Unless the entire Star Pole City was sealed, the news would definitely spread. The local cultivators had something similar to a communication device. They could send messages from afar to let the outside world know about the situation here. The fact that Yi Tianyun and his team were found out so quickly was largely due to their communication device. After the news spread, all the districts in the celestial terminus ancestral land were shocked. They did not expect the strongest god extermination team to be made up of cultivators from the lower worlds. This was something that they could never have imagined. It was actually made up of cultivators from the lower worlds. This was not the main point. The main point was that Yi Tianyun was a cultivator with a unique star dharma. He had the ability to remove the slave imprint. He had even removed the slave imprint of the god extermination team. When the news spread, it was what really shocked the celestial terminus ancestral land. This was especially true for the higher-ups of the organization. They were extremely shocked and immediately panicked. They had never panicked like this before, including Great Elder Yao Yuan. What's going on? He can remove the slave imprint? Great Elder Yao Yuan had always been unperturbed. Even if several elders had died, he would not have cared. However, this matter had truly shocked him. He almost jumped out of his chair. His face was full of shock. According to the news, he can remove the slave imprint. He was the one who got rid of all the slaves in the mine, including the god exterminator team. The elders who were making the report were filled with astonishment. They had never imagined that this would happen. Everything was too sudden, too unexpected. There was actually such an existence. The most important thing is, why did he come to get rid of the slave mark? What did we do to provoke him? Grand Elder Yao Yuan was furious. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't think of any big problems. He carefully searched for any forces that he had provoked recently. But no matter how he thought about it, he could only think of one enemy. This mortal enemy was the divine cauldron ancestral land. Could it be that he was really sent by the ancestral land of the divine cauldron? The elder below said weakly, "Divine cauldron ancestral land. No matter which force sent it, this matter has already endangered the foundation of our Empyrean terminus ancestral land." Great Elder Yao Yuan said sternly, "I'll contact Celestial Terminus Lord now and ask him to return. As for the rest of you, move out. You must kill this guy, don't hold back at all." Great Elder Yao Yuan's voice was extremely cold. This kind of scourge must not be allowed to exist. They could all imagine what would happen to the Empyrean terminus ancestral land if they continued to let Yi Tianyun do as he pleased. All the elders shouted in unison, their eyes filled with fierce killing intent. Yi Tianyun had changed from an existence that was originally being roped into an existence that was wanted by everyone. Now that he had even asked Celestial Terminus Lord to take charge, the results would definitely be extremely serious. This Celestial Lord was that Celestial Lord. In the lower realms, there was also the title of Celestial Lord. However, the difference between the two was not even on the same level. It was not even the difference between clouds and mud. This was the same principle as the Divine Emperor. In the lower realms, he was called the Divine Emperor. He was not worthy here at all. The same was true for Celestial Lords. The meaning of calling them Celestial Lords was completely different. Some cultivation names were the same, but here, it was a completely new definition. In the end, those cultivation names were nothing more than the self-definition of the cultivators in the lower realms. There was a kind of random definition, thinking that they were the strongest. Especially the Emperor. A mere lower realm dared to call himself an emperor? When the cultivators in the ancestors' land found out about this situation, they all felt extremely disdainful. They all thought, such trash dares to call himself an emperor? Those who called themselves emperors here were not ordinary existences. Even the celestial lords themselves did not dare to call themselves emperors. Emperors were even more powerful existences. Report. At this moment, a guard rushed in from outside. Instantly, all eyes gathered on him as if he was being pricked by needles. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and reported with his head lowered, the sealed sky city has fallen. All the slaves have been liberated, and the city lord has been killed. So fast? All the elders were shocked. They had just received the news, and the other party had already taken action? It was fine that they had taken action, but the sealed sky city had fallen so quickly. Wasn't it a little too fast? The sealed sky city has more than half of the slaves. If all of them are liberated, it will indeed fall the fastest. Some of the elders immediately knew why it had fallen so quickly. It was all because there were too many slaves. It seems that they are now targeting the place with the most slaves and liberating them. The next area should be Falling Cloud City. There are also many slaves there. Report, report. Another guard hurriedly rushed in from outside, knelt on the ground and shouted, Luo Yun City has fallen. The city lord has been killed. What? They were stunned again. Hadn't the sealed sky city just been destroyed? Why was it Falling Cloud City's turn now? Wasn't the distance between the two a little too far? This was not the end. Another guard rushed in and shouted, Dingyu City has fallen. The city lord has been killed. Wasn't it a little too fast for them to fall into the enemy's hands so quickly? What's going on? Even if these cities are connected, the distance between them is quite far. How can it be so fast? All the elders were stunned. A guess rose in their hearts. Tianyun was not alone. He must have a strong helper. However, in the case of the slave imprint, logically speaking, only Tianyun could solve it. Could it be that there is someone else who can remove the slave imprint? Many of the elders felt their hair stand on end. This was probably the only possibility. If that wasn't the case, how could he be able to deal with the slaves in other cities so quickly? It should be. It must have been done by the ancestral land of the divine cauldron. The other elders were furious, but they were even more flustered. If we don't hurry up with this matter, I'm afraid our celestial pole ancestral land will. Chapter 1893. The guesses of the elders of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land were naturally irrelevant. What divine cauldron ancestral land? These were all nonsense. The ancestral land of the divine cauldron could be said to be scolded even when they were lying down. They probably didn't even know that they had been misunderstood. In terms of helpers, Tianyun didn't have any. If there was a helper, it would be Team God Extermination. He brought a few members of the God Extermination team with him and started to teleport. By teleporting back and forth, they could naturally achieve the effect of quickly eradicating enemy cities. For example, Dingyu City was on the other side of Stargazing City. To the elders of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land, Jixing City was between Dingyu City and Cloudfall City. If he went to Luoyun City first and then to Dingyu City, the distance would be quite far. It would definitely not be so easy to get there. Tianyun, on the other hand, set his sights on Jixing City. After destroying Luoyun City, he proceeded to destroy Dingyu City. With the help of the teleportation god stone, the speed was still very shocking. In particular, he did not need to bring too many troops. He only needed to kill his way over and let the members of the god extermination team suppress the various city lords or protect him. It was enough for Tianyun to release the slave imprints. In every city, there were some powerful slaves. As long as they were liberated, this city would immediately become extremely fragile and could be easily destroyed. In the end, to be able to conquer the city so quickly, the number of slaves accounted for a large number. They could only blame the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land for placing too much trust in the slave imprint. In fact, slave imprints were really trustworthy. They were usually very difficult to break, especially when there were so many of them. If one could be cured, there were thousands more waiting to be cured. Who knew how long it would take for all of them to be removed? Now that a strange existence had appeared, if Yi Tianyun were to remove it as a whole, it could even cover the entire city. This was the benefit of breaking through to Master Xing. There was no need to break through to the middle stage. Just the early stage was enough to cover the entire city. Grandmaster Xing's cultivation was so powerful that he could easily cover millions of miles. He could even cover millions of miles. It would not be a problem for them to easily destroy these cities. At the same time, they would gain a large number of cultivators. Perhaps they were not absolutely loyal, but their goal was the same: to overthrow the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. Only a small portion of them still had the mentality of living one day at a time and didn't choose to resist the celestial pole ancestral land. They were used to being enslaved, so they wouldn't resist. In the end, this was the minority. Most of them were filled with unquenchable anger. Therefore, they chose to follow Yi Tianyun and fight together. They would fight to the death to destroy the celestial pole ancestral land. Because of this, the reputation of Yi Tianyun's support was extremely high. If it wasn't for the fact that their anger hadn't been extinguished, it would have been very difficult to deal with them. It would not be easy to deal with this small group of people. No matter which faction it is, the most important thing now is to get rid of that brat. I don't want the Celestial Terminus Lord to find that the matter here has not been resolved when he returns. If he comes to resolve it himself, the consequences will be dire. Great Elder Yao Yuan looked at them coldly. Yes, this must be done. They hurriedly nodded, not daring to be the slightest bit careless. Then they all turned around and left to kill Yi Tianyun. Great Elder Yao Yuan didn't stay idle either. He turned around and went to a secret room. There was a communication point here, and it was an emergency communication point. He went to the communication point, took out a token, and pressed it on the communication point. Then he started to send messages. After a while, he frowned. This is strange. I can't contact the Celestial Terminus Lord. Is the range of communication too far? After a few more attempts, he gave up. It seems that we can't contact him. We can only rely on ourselves. Great Elder Yao Yuan's face was solemn. If they still can't do it, we can only mobilize that force. Great Elder Yao Yuan turned around and left with the other elders, heading to the area where Yi Tianyun was. This matter had attracted all the elders. They had to admit that Yi Tianyun's actions were really frightening. They could only come to resolve it as soon as possible. It should be said that they couldn't be slow at all. If they continued to be slow, who knew how many cities would fall? Previously, when Yi Tianyun killed so many cultivators, they didn't take it very seriously. They only sent 1 or 2 experts. Now they felt that they were wrong. Let alone 1 or 2 experts, they had to send all of them. Yi Tianyun's side was also expanding rapidly. One city after another fell, and he also killed many city lords. All of them exploded with one stomp. He didn't need any extra strength. It's about time. They should be sending all their experts. This was the effect that Yi Tianyun wanted. Previously, he thought that he could attract many elders. Who knew that he had overestimated his situation? The other party didn't take him seriously. Now, it was definitely different. If they still didn't take him seriously, they would be courting death. This city is a little interesting. When Yi Tianyun arrived at one of the cities, he stopped outside and looked at the city with a smile. Lord Tianyun, what's wrong? The group of experts following behind him didn't know why Yi Tianyun suddenly stopped, which puzzled them. Wait for me here. Someone wants to receive me. Yi Tianyun flew over with a smile. Just as he approached the city, a tall seal was erected all around him. Suddenly, a tall seal was erected all around. Not only did it envelop the entire city, but even a large area of open space outside was also enveloped by it. I knew this guy would definitely come to Guiyu City, right? There are so many slaves in Guiyu City, they will definitely come. Elder Fan Yuan flew out and looked at Yi Tianyun coldly. He sneered and said, "This time, he has stepped into our sealing formation." Even if he has the Star Dharma idol, he still won't be able to escape. We didn't set it up for nothing. I thought we were smart, but we walked right into a trap. How ridiculous. Elder Yu Fan flew out with a smile. He was confident about everything. Kid from the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron, I don't know how you removed the slave imprint, but everything ends here. After I take care of you, I'll take care of your ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. Another elder stood up. All the elders were gathered here, waiting for Yi Tianyun to come over. As long as they continued to attack the city, they would definitely come here. There was no problem with the layout. As expected, Tianyun had fallen into the trap. Ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron? Yi Tianyun shook his head and said, I don't know about the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. Stop quibbling, you must be from the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. No matter how you lie, it's meaningless. Elder Fan Yuan coldly snorted and said, You will pay the price later. Chapter 1894. The Divine Cauldron ancestral land took the blame for Yi Tianyun, but Yi Tianyun did not care about this. In any case, it was the other party who thought that he was right, so it had nothing to do with him. Is that so? Did you really think that I didn't know that you were waiting for me here? Yi Tianyun strode forward, and when he saw the group of elders, he smiled. They were all local experts, and the strongest was at the level of a late-stage Master Xing. They were considered the most outstanding existences. Among them, there were no less than 20 elders. Among them, there were no less than 100 deacons, who were around the level of Master Xing's early stage. As for those with other cultivation bases, there were countless of them. As for the slaves, they were hidden and didn't dare to let them out. After all, in the face of Yi Tianyun's powerful ability to remove the slave imprint, they didn't dare to let the slaves come. So what if you know? Do you think you still have a chance to escape? Or is there someone helping him? Elder Fan Yuan looked around. After looking around, he said indifferently, Where's your helper? Go ahead and call him out. Let me see just how strong your Divine Cauldron ancestral land is. They didn't dare to say that all of them had been mobilized, but at least most of their experts had been mobilized. There were more than 100 star grandmasters and several hundred star masters in the late stage. This showed the true strength of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. They were very cautious, worried that the Divine Cauldron ancestral land would send many experts, which was why they sent so many. From their point of view, they had sent so many experts over. Even if the majority of the Divine Cauldron ancestral land were to come out, they would still have the power to fight. The cultivators outside the seal turned deathly pale. Among them, Dengfeng's expression was unsightly. He had not expected the other party to mobilize all of their strength. Against such a powerful force, how could Yi Tianyun resist? Damn it, it's all my fault. Why didn't I stop him from going? Deng Feng swung his fist and smashed it heavily against the barrier. Dong! The barrier only rippled slightly. It was not damaged in the slightest. This sturdy barrier was not something he could break even if he fought for his entire life. His cultivation was too low, it was impossible for him to break the shield. Captain Deng Feng, what should we do? Lord is trapped inside and surrounded by so many experts. I'm afraid he's dead for sure. Could it be that Lord is really from the Divine Cauldron ancestral land? Where are the experts of the Divine Cauldron ancestral land? Why aren't they here to support us? That's right. If this goes on, our Lord will definitely be caught. They were extremely anxious and wanted to help, but they could not be of any help at all. Even the team of God Extermination couldn't do any damage to the protective shield when they kept hitting it. This shield was formed by the combined strength of many elders. It wasn't something that a few members of the God Slayer team could destroy. Ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. Deng Feng shook his head. At present, only he knew that Yi Tianyun was not sent by the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. How could he have the help of the Divine Cauldron ancestral land when he came up from the lower realms with him? This is all because of my carelessness and arrogance. I didn't expect them to move out so quickly. Dengfeng's estimation was still wrong. He had thought that the other party would definitely send out their experts, but he didn't expect them to turn out in full force. Deng Feng fell into a deep state of self-blame. He wanted to help, but there was nothing he could do. What should we do now? They all looked at Deng Feng. They all knew that Deng Feng was Yi Tianyun's most trusted subordinate, and many things were entrusted to Deng Feng. Continue smashing. Smash it with brute force. Deng Feng gritted his teeth and summoned his star idol to attack the barrier in a frenzy. The rest of the people also followed suit. They had no other choice. However, no matter how much they attacked, the barrier was not damaged in the slightest. When the many elders inside saw the situation outside, they revealed disdainful smiles. Where are your people? Why aren't they coming out to rescue? Could it be that they were saving this trash? If we really rely on them, then we'll capture you first. I don't believe that the people from the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron won't come out to save you if I capture you. Elder Fan Yuan opened his hand, and the giant sword god star appeared behind him. The giant sword god star that soared into the sky emitted a sharp sword light in all directions, as if it could cut everything into countless pieces. As an elder, his own level was naturally not low. The giant sword god star was a level 4 Dharma idol, and its power could not be underestimated. Elder Fan Yuan wasn't the only one. Even the elders beside him unleashed their star Dharma powers. They were still vigilant, worried that there would be an ambush in the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. The two powerful elders that they had sent out had been killed, and they did not think that they were killed by Yi Tianyun. It was very likely that they were killed by the experts of the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. Therefore, they were all vigilant, and on the contrary, they were a little lax towards Yi Tianyun. I already said, I'm not from the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. Against you, even if I have helpers, I don't need them. I alone am enough. Yi Tianyun stepped forward step by step. Facing the hundreds of Grandmasters Xing, his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. In his opinion, they were all a pile of star energy. You alone are enough? Elder Fan Yuan and the others seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. They looked up to the sky and laughed, tears about to flow out. After a while, they calmed down. How ridiculous, you don't even know what kind of existence you're facing. There are hundreds of Grandmasters Xing. Do you think that your unique star Dharma idol is really strong and invincible? It's undeniable that your unique Dharma idol can suppress our Dharma idol, but the Dharma idol doesn't decide everything. Do you understand? Elder Fan Yuan looked him up and down and said, Grandmaster Xing's early cultivation is not bad, but in the face of so many Grandmasters, your cultivation is nothing. Elder Fan Yuan did not put the unique Dharma idol in his eyes at all. It was not that the unique Dharma idol was too weak, but that the unique Dharma idol was not absolutely invincible. If one's cultivation was too weak, then it would really be nothing. Actually, I think so too. The difference in cultivation is too great. It is indeed difficult to deal with. Tianyun smiled and walked over, not feeling the slightest sense of danger, but I really don't think it's a problem to deal with you bunch of beasts. After all, there's no longer a need for you bunch of beasts to live in this world. You will only waste the resources of this world. What did you say? Elder Fan Yuan's expression was ugly. He waved his hand in the air, and a giant void sword cut through the void, slashing straight towards Yi Tianyun, not caring about Yi Tianyun's life or death. He did not control his strength too much. If he was hit, he would either die or be injured. Ding! The giant sword that was slashing down was forcibly frozen in the air. Yi Tianyun raised his hand in the air, preventing the giant sword from pressing down even half an inch. Chapter 1895. Yi Tianyun gently clamped down on such an overbearing sword. Elder Fan Yuan could not move at all. No matter how hard he tried, he could not move at all. This sword that carried the giant sword god's star seemed so weak. Everyone was dumbfounded. Everyone knew Elder Fan Yuan's strength. He was at the level of a middle-stage Master Xing, close to the level of a late-stage Master Xing combined with the divine star sword. His attack power was definitely far beyond that of an ordinary Master Xing. But now, he could not even cut half an inch. It was really incredible. This is the power you were talking about? Tianyun stretched out his hand and smashed the huge sword. Then he looked up to the sky and laughed. I'll show you what real power is. I'm enough. Tianyun's unique star dharma appeared behind him. The five-colored emperor dragon roared, and he transformed into a huge dharma body. He lifted his foot and stomped down. The invincible giant palm pressed down fiercely. All the star dharma bodies that emerged were crushed and turned into nothingness. Boom! The giant claw pressed down and tore everything apart. Elder Fan Yuan opened his mouth wide. When he wanted to say something, he was already torn to pieces by the giant claw. Even the other elders beside him became like tofu, looking extremely weak. They all died under the claw. The overbearing power spread in all directions, scaring the cultivators in the distance. This is not the cultivation of an early-stage Master Xing. It's the level of a late-stage Master Xing. They were all stunned. The power that Tianyun emitted just now was only that of an early-stage Master Xing. How could he be so strong after transforming into the Star Dharma body? This was simply impossible. Transforming into the Star Dharma body state would at most increase his power. It would not even increase his cultivation. This kind of ability was definitely something that had never been seen or heard of before. In reality, such a strange thing naturally would not happen. Even if his cultivation increased, it was with the help of elixirs. In a short period of time, he could explode with amazing power. It was just that they did not see Tianyun use any elixirs. It was really incredible that he could have such an effect. Even if it was a divine pill, it wouldn't be able to raise his cultivation by 2 levels, right? Tianyun naturally didn't rely on any medicinal pills, but on leveling up. He raised his cultivation to the late stage of Grandmaster Xing in one go, advancing 2 realms in a row. He had destroyed quite a few cities, and he didn't know how many deacons and city lords had died at his hands. The star energy he had obtained had exploded, allowing him to advance to the late-stage Master Star Master level. In the face of so many experts, he rose up in one go and faced these bastards. Too scary. Quick, run away. They turned around and wanted to escape, but some of them found that they couldn't even escape. This barrier not only trapped Tianyun inside, but it also trapped them inside. Unless the Elder dispels the Great Array, the barrier will not be able to last forever. Originally, they wanted to trap Tianyun, but now they were the ones trapped instead. Tianyun crazily rushed over. With a single step, he destroyed an area, and all life within it was annihilated. He was vicious and merciless. Since they were so vicious to him, then they couldn't blame him for being impolite. This was especially true since the city was filled with experts that they had gathered, so he didn't have any intention of being polite. The 5 elements within his body burst forth. Flames that could burn the heavens, the indestructible power of metal, the crushing power of earth, the life-sucking power of wood, and the drowning power of water. After all the elemental powers burst forth, the city instantly turned into a living hell. A group of cultivators wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves, but they couldn't escape even if they wanted to. The elders wanted to dispel the barrier, but many of them were missing, so it was difficult to do so. Tianyun stomped down again, and a few more grandmasters were killed. He also swept away the lives of a dozen or so star masters. As for those with even lower cultivation, they were swept away even more. It could be said that the experts that Elder Fan Yuan and the others had brought with them couldn't withstand a single blow from Tianyun. This was especially true when paired with crazy mode. Everything was like a piece of paper, shattering with a single touch. When Deng Feng and the others saw this scene from the outside, they were all stunned. They thought that Tianyun was finished, but now it seemed that they didn't need to worry at all. His Excellency is too powerful. This is the standard of a star master in the late stage. He is even stronger than the standard of an ordinary star master. Yes, how did His Excellency cultivate? Even with this barrier, I feel that I can't even block one move and will be trampled to death. This is too scary. Fortunately, we are in the same team as His Excellency, otherwise, the cultivators outside were stunned. When they thought about how they were in the same team as Lee Tianyun, they felt really lucky. At the same time, they were pleasantly surprised. Tianyun was so valiant, which meant that they could win. At the same time, they thought about Lee Tianyun's words, "He alone is enough." Not only them, but even the cultivators who were fleeing in all directions thought about what Lee Tianyun said just now. Just one person was enough to sweep through everything. What Star Master? In front of him, he was just trash. Lee Tianyun, who had transformed into the five-colored Emperor Dragon, kept stepping forward. Every attack from his huge body was enough to destroy heaven and earth. He could easily kill them without the slightest difficulty. With one stomp, a large number of Star Masters were turned into meat paste. In a short period of time, more than half of the 100 Star Masters and 1,000 Star Masters were killed or injured. The remaining people were just some rats who were fleeing in disorder. God, is our celestial terminus ancestral lands doomed? Where is celestial terminus Lord? Is he not back yet? Celestial terminus Lord, please come back quickly, a group of cultivators wailed. If this continued, they would really die. How dare you? How dare you? An imposing figure appeared outside the barrier. He stretched out his hand and struck in the void. A level 5-star Dharma form appeared behind him. It was a divine beast that looked like a Kuan Peng. The invincible devouring whale absorbed the energy released by Lee Tianyun and swallowed it all into its stomach. This allowed the surrounding cultivators to escape a little further and not be killed immediately. Oh, it also looks like a Kuan Peng Dharma form, but it's just a resemblance. It's just a lion peng with the blood of the Kuan Peng. Lee Tianyun snorted disdainfully. The one who flew down to help them was Great Elder Yao Yuan. He had a level 5-star Dharma form, which was the Lion Peng star form. The Lion Peng had the blood of the Kuan Peng. It looked like a lion but was not a lion. It had a huge body and had inherited some of the blood of the Kuan Peng. Chapter 1896. Great Elder Yao Yuan is here to save us. It's Great Elder Yao Yuan. It was as if they had seen the hope of victory, and their eyes were filled with surprise. Great Elder Yao Yuan was the most powerful existence apart from the Celestial Pole Lord. With the bloodline of the Lion Rock, he could devour everything, including all kinds of energy. The energy released by Lee Tianyun being devoured was the best proof. After Great Elder Yao Yuan penetrated the barrier, he landed steadily in front of Lee Tianyun and intercepted him. His body, which was also in the form of the Star Dharma idol, was not weaker than Lee Tianyun's, and the two were even on par. The Lion Rock that possessed the bloodline of the Kuan Peng was naturally not weaker than any other species in terms of size. Therefore, when it expanded, it was not inferior to the 5-colored Emperor Dragon, and was even a little bigger. If one didn't look closely, the two would be about the same size. The energy is not bad, as expected of the power of the Star Dharma idol. However, with just this little bit of power, you want to be presumptuous here? You're still too inexperienced. Great Elder Yao Yuan devoured the energy released by Lee Tianyun in the blink of an eye, leaving not a single drop behind. Are you the Great Elder Yao Yuan they were talking about? Have you finally appeared after hiding in the back? I remember you were behind, but you've been watching for a long time. Isn't it a little late to come out now? Or rather, do you really not treat the lives of your companions as lives? You're really cold-blooded, just like how you treat cultivators from the lower realms. Lee Tianyun laughed mockingly. When this guy appeared, he had already sensed it, but he did not expose him. Now that the situation was over and they were about to be destroyed, wasn't it a little too late to rush out? However, Tianyun knew why he did this. It was to ambush at the side to see if there were any experts from the Divine Cauldron ancestral land nearby. At the critical moment, he would be able to kill them. Who knew that from beginning to end, the experts from the Divine Cauldron ancestral land did not appear, and he was forced to come out. If he continued to hide at the side, then all the experts on his side would really die. What? Has Great Elder Yao Yuan been hiding there all this time? This can't be, right? Even in such a situation, he is still hiding by the side to check on the situation. Great Elder Yao Yuan, isn't this too much? Look at the losses on this side. They were also aware of Grand Elder Yao Yuan's intentions. However, the situation had been dire. If they had come out earlier, this situation definitely wouldn't have happened. With just a few words, you've already affected the morale of my side. You're really eloquent. Great Elder Yao Yuan snorted coldly. All of this is to guard against your divine cauldron ancestral land's sneak attack. I didn't expect this group of trash to be unable to stop you. Not only did Great Elder Yao Yuan not regret it, he even called them a bunch of trash. To him, those without abilities were a bunch of trash. Since your helpers aren't willing to come forward, then I'll cripple you. I don't believe that they won't come out to save you. Great Elder Yao Yuan always believed that Yi Tianyun had support, and it was the support of the ancestral land of the divine cauldron. Cripple me? Tianyun sneered. I just said that if you were a real Kuanpeng, I might be a little worried. However, just because you have a little Kuanpeng bloodline, you think you're a divine beast Kuanpeng? You're just like a snake. You think you're a real dragon just because you have a little dragon bloodline? What a joke. Arrogant. Great Elder Yao Yuan roared, and his huge body pressed down on Yi Tianyun's body. Great Elder Yao Yuan wanted to suck Yi Tianyun's soul and energy out of his body, but he also wanted to suck Yi Tianyun's soul. You're the arrogant one. Yi Tianyun laughed loudly. The five-colored Emperor Dragon still had that look of disdain in its eyes, ignoring everything. With a body of the same size, the five-colored power gathered at one point. Not to mention being devoured, it couldn't even be extracted. This stunned the first Elder Yao Yuan. Even a star venerate level existence would feel some fear when he swallowed at full power. Facing this five-colored Emperor Dragon, he seemed very powerless. Boom! Yi Tianyun's claw had already smashed down, tearing through the void. Great Elder Yao Yuan hurriedly dodged, but it was too late. The sharp claw struck down, tearing the lower half of the Lion Rock's body like a piece of paper. The seemingly tough body was like a piece of paper. Nothing could block one claw. If there was, it would be two claw attacks. Phew! Although the crowd was extremely displeased by Grand Elder Yao Yuan's words, they all acknowledged Grand Elder Yao Yuan's strength. Now, in front of Yi Tianyun, he seemed so weak, unable to withstand a single blow. They all sucked in a breath of cold air. Wasn't Yi Tianyun too heaven-defying? Why was he even stronger than before? Humph! After Great Elder Yao Yuan was knocked back, he quickly returned to his original body. His face was pale. He didn't expect Yi Tianyun's strength to be so strong. It was already showing a suppressive effect. If the Great Elder Yao Yuan had not retreated quickly, his entire body would have been torn apart. At that time, it wouldn't just be a simple injury. If his star dermic incarnation was torn apart, his soul would have been injured. Fortunately, only a small portion of his soul was injured. Otherwise, his soul would have been severely injured. How can this brat be so strong? Didn't he just obtain his unique star dermic incarnation? Not only can he turn into his dermic incarnation, but he also has such a terrifying cultivation. How did he do it? Great Elder Yao Yuan could not believe that Yi Tianyun had managed to raise his cultivation in such a short time. Previously, he had indeed been a star apostle. If he had come to deal with Yi Tianyun, he would have been able to kill him with one palm strike. However, they had given Yi Tianyun too much time. Now that he had raised his cultivation, he would have no problem breaking through to the star venerate realm if given some more time. Others needed a lot of time and resources to raise their cultivation. Yi Tianyun's cultivation was very simple. All he needed to do was kill. With a large amount of star energy, he could easily level up. Didn't you say that you would cripple me? With your current strength, you are still far from being able to cripple me, right? Yi Tianyun did not give the other party too much time to catch his breath. He continued to charge at Great Elder Yao Yuan, taking advantage of his weakness to take his life. The ferocious attacks filled the sky with an aura of death. Everything it touched turned to dust. Great Elder Yao Yuan's face turned ashen as he quickly retreated. At the same time, he formed hand seals and shouted angrily, "Protectors of the celestial pole ancestral land, heed my command and come to protect the celestial pole ancestral land." Rumble. Chapter 1897. Guardian Deities? Tianyun narrowed his eyes. He knew that the celestial pole ancestral land definitely had more than this. It definitely had some accumulations. Otherwise, how could it have existed for so long? With a rumbling sound, a huge crack appeared in the ground. Many pitch-black hands crawled up from below. A deathly aura surged out of the crack and spread into the surroundings as if it came from the depths of hell. Soon after, experts who had been sealed deep underground crawled out from the depths of the earth. They were the guardian deities of the celestial pole ancestral land. To put it bluntly, they were a group of failures sealed underground. Once they appeared, they were basically half dead. They could not appear too many times. If they appeared several times in a row, they would turn to dust. Or if they appeared once and erupted with their full power, they would definitely die. These guardian deities failed to break through, causing their bodies to be in a state that was neither human nor ghost. Their bodies were filled with the deathly aura. Even their cultivation had fallen to late-stage Grandmaster Xing. They probably wanted to break through from Star Venerate to a higher level, but they failed. This was like the previous tribulations. There were also failures. Once they failed, those with better conditions could still survive. Under the situation of energy sealing, they could still preserve their previous strength. However, as time passed, their strength would gradually weaken. Their cultivation would continuously fall, eventually falling to late-stage Grandmaster Xing's cultivation. In the end, they were a group of people on the verge of death, struggling at death's door. It would be hard for them to come back to life in this lifetime unless an even more heaven-defying expert came back to help them. It looked like that was impossible now. Even so, they were originally Star Venerates. Now, their cultivations all fell to late-stage Grandmaster Xing's. Although their cultivations fell, their cultivation was still there. A strong cultivation was not just for show. Who dares to invade my celestial pole ancestral land? The guardian deities crawled up from underground. There were not many of them, only 3. This meant that 3 Star Venerates had appeared in the celestial pole ancestral land. Who knew that they would fail to break through? When they appeared, a deathly aura spread in the surroundings. Naturally, they were not buried in this area. They just instantly moved over. With their abilities, they could easily do so. After it appeared, a terrifying death chi shrouded the surroundings. Some cultivators who didn't manage to escape in time were infected by the death chi, and their vitality was quickly sucked dry. Those who were slow to escape were immediately turned into dried corpses, paralyzed on the ground, unable to move. He wasn't dead. He was just a dried corpse. If someone came to rescue him, he could still live. What they extracted was only life force, not the soul, so there was no need to worry about death. However, if they were not treated for a long time, it would cause permanent damage to them. Yes, it's the Lord Guardian God. That Star Lord Soaring Cloud, the Guardian God from a long time ago. That Star Lord Ning Su, a legendary powerful Guardian God who led the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land to conquer the world. There is also the Jade Dragon Star Venerate. He seems to have the dragon race's bloodline and is extremely strong. Despite facing several Star Venerates, he could still easily leave. When they saw these guardian deities, they could recognize who they were. They were all extremely famous Star Venerate experts in the history of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. As long as they were not very young, they could easily recognize them. Unexpectedly, they all crawled out of the ground all of a sudden. It seemed that Tianyun was already enough to threaten the existence of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. With their appearance, we will definitely be able to kill that brat. That's right. We will definitely be able to kill him. After letting him jump around for so long, the guardian deities will definitely avenge us. Kill him and let the Divine Cauldron ancestral land know that our Empyrean Terminus ancestral land is not to be trifled with. They were shouting as if they were on steroids. They finally saw hope. Even Great Elder Yao Yuan, who was so strong, was defeated. If the Empyrean Terminus Star Lord did not appear, then they would really be defeated. 3 guardian deities, he was sent by the divine cauldron ancestral land. He is a genius with a unique star dharma aspect. He has killed many of our city lords and even has the ability to break the slave imprint. He has destroyed the balance of our Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. I hope the 3 guardian deities can kill him. Great Elder Yao Yuan came over and respectfully greeted the 3 guardian deities. Whether it was strength or status, they were all higher than him. Unique star dharma aspect. The 3 of them stared at Yi Tianyun. Their eyes were filled with jealousy, but there was even more killing intent in them. Especially when they heard about the ability to break the slave imprint, the killing intent in their eyes soared to the sky. The slave imprint was the foundation of their Empyrean Terminus ancestral land. If it was destroyed like this, the impact would be great, and it might even cause the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land to be destroyed. It was even sent by the divine cauldron ancestral land. It seems that the divine cauldron ancestral land has always been at odds with us. This time, they even sent out an existence that can break the slave imprint. This is really unexpected. Star Lord Yulong's pitch-black eyes flickered with a scarlet light. It was unknown how many lives they had devoured to be able to survive until now. The process must have been extremely cruel. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for them to live for so long. Breaking the slave imprint. Star Lord Ling Yun laughed sinisterly. You actually dare to touch our slave imprint. What else do you want to do, but you want to touch our slave imprint? Star Lord Ling Yun's laughter was filled with killing intent. The reason they could live for so long was because they relied on slaves. They constantly sucked the slaves that were sent to them to prolong their lives. No matter who it is, as long as they invade our Empyrean Terminus ancestral land, they must die. Star Lord Ning Su said sternly. The 3 of them flew towards Yi Tianyun, and the aura of death filled the air. Even their own people were sucked dry by them. Even if they were full of respect for them, they had no choice but to escape. If they did not escape, they would die. You 3 old farts want me to die? Yi Tianyun looked at them and said disdainfully, if you were still in the state you were in before you died, perhaps I would still be a little afraid. But with your appearance, which is neither human nor ghost, in my opinion, there is no difference between you and someone who has just been killed. Yi Tianyun pointed to the bloody area at the side with an indifferent expression. Ha, what a joke. Do you think that you are really invincible just because you have a unique star aspect? Star Lord Ling Yun sneered and said, we will let you know what it means to say that there is always someone better than you. I have seen too many arrogant geniuses like you. You think that you have some ability, and your tail is up to the sky. Little do you know that true strength is not only in cultivation, but also in realm. A perfect realm, combined with the star aspect, is the most powerful. Chapter 1898. The Ling Yun star venerate stretched out his hand and flicked gently. A huge image appeared behind him. If one looked carefully, they would discover that it was a thundercloud. Dense lightning descended from the sky. When it struck the ground, huge pits appeared in the hard ground. When one looked carefully, one would discover that the dermic incarnation that the Ling Yun star venerate burst out of was at least grade 5. The important thing was that there was a special change when compared to Grandmaster Xing. That was, there was a thundercloud in the starry region in the sky that continuously sent down energy, providing a kind of energy boost. The greatest difference between a star venerate and a Grandmaster Xing was that they could truly draw out the energy in the starry region. Previously, they relied purely on their own strength to burst out. Now, they could borrow the power of the stars in the sky. They were truly monarchs. Monarchs could carve out their own territories. Hence, they were called star venerates. Compared to the lower realm star venerates, the difference was like heaven and earth. The two could not be mentioned in the same breath. Boom! The thundercloud in the grade 5 starry region continuously sent down divine lightning, overlapping with the Ling Yun star venerate. It was like a thunder god descending. The Lingyun star venerate's cultivation was not at the star venerate level, but his cultivation was still there. Hence, the Lingyun star venerate could also draw out the power of a star venerate. This was also why he said that he could not surpass Grandmaster Xing. Even though their cultivations were about the same, their cultivation was different. Grandmaster Xing could not draw out that power. That was the greatest difference. In reality, there was indeed a huge difference. The Lingyun star venerate's cultivation was about the same as the first elder Yao Yuan's. However, based on the current situation where the Lingyun star venerate summoned the power of the stars, their overall combat prowess was dozens of times weaker. If the Lingyun star venerate's cultivation was still that of a star venerate, its might would be easy to imagine. Do you see that? This is the difference in strength. The Lingyun star venerate walked over to Yi Tianyun in the air. It was like there was an invisible staircase in the air, allowing him to walk over step by step. With every step the Lingyun star venerate took, countless bolts of lightning descended. Then, they struck the surrounding area. Everything that the lightning touched turned into powder, vanishing from this world. Those who did not flee quickly were directly blasted into powder. This Lingyun star lord did not care if there were any of his people below. He just walked over, trying to put an invisible pressure on Yi Tianyun. Deng Feng and the others' expressions instantly changed. When they saw this terrifying divine lightning and this shocking aura, they couldn't help but take a few steps back. That's the protector of the Empyrean Pole ancestral land. Can the Lord deal with it? Their scalps went numb. They had always heard that the celestial terminus ancestral land had a protector god. Rumor had it that it was an existence that could easily defeat a group of experts. It was unknown how many Grandmaster Xing had died in their hands. No matter how strong Yi Tianyun was, he was still a Grandmaster Xing in the end. He was still far from a star venerate. It shouldn't be a problem. Although Deng Feng said so, he was still a little nervous. Any one of the three guardian gods would be extremely difficult to deal with. This aura alone far surpassed the power that Yi Tianyun had displayed. Not to mention the difference between the two of them was like heaven and earth. Just from the feeling alone, there was a huge gap. As a result, their morale plummeted. They didn't even have a chance to help outside. Previously, their momentum was like a hot knife through butter. Now, it was completely listless. They felt so insignificant. At first, they thought that they could break through the entire Empyrean Pole ancestral land in one go. Now, it seemed that their foundation was still too weak. Because of this, even though Deng Feng said it, they still didn't really believe him. They could only say that they were somewhat worried. If Yi Tianyun died, what would they do? Without Yi Tianyun's help to remove the slave mark, they couldn't continue fighting. They could only live a life of escape. Fortunately, the slave mark was gone. They could escape, but revenge would probably take a long time. While the morale here was low, the people in the city were boiling. Even though Lingyun Star Lord had killed his own people, their fervor didn't decrease at all. After all, to them, as long as they could repel Yi Tianyun's group, it would be a good thing. The two Star Lords next to him were somewhat displeased. Among them, Star Lord Ning Su turned to look at Great Elder Yao Yuan and said with dissatisfaction, "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You only need to send one guardian deity. Why did you wake all of us up? Even if the power of the unique star aspect is not bad, you think too highly of him to ask all of us to come out." Great Elder Yao Yuan was very embarrassed. He cupped his fists and said respectfully, "I'm very sorry that this happened because of a moment of impatience. However, after this, I will order someone to send a slave with a stronger life force over. At that time, it will definitely be able to replenish the guardian deity's consumption." Well, you're considerate about that. All these years, we can all feel your loyalty. After this matter, remember to investigate the situation of the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. We have always had a bad relationship with the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. It's time to settle the score. Star Lord Ning Su sneered. He felt that some things couldn't be delayed any longer. While they were discussing, there was a sudden boom from the side. The huge phantom of the five-colored Emperor Dragon pressed down. Accompanied by a strong vibration, A deep pit appeared on the ground. The thundercloud star above them immediately became dim, as if it had been extinguished. When the five-colored Emperor Dragon raised its huge claw, Star-Lord Lingyun was already flattened. However, the death chi on his body was even heavier. He was not dead, but he looked like he was half-crippled. What is the difference in strength? Yi Tianyun looked down at everything with a gaze that seemed to look down on the world. He looked down at Star-Lord Lingyun, who was lying limp on the ground. It looked like he was about to die. What grade 5-star aspect? What star venerate realm? They were not worth mentioning in front of him. It was undeniable that Star-Lord Lingyun was very strong. When combined with the star venerate realm, his strength increased significantly. Unfortunately, under the combination of crazy mode and the unique star aspect, everything else was just an ant. Your strength. Star-Lord Lingyun's body twitched. When he wanted to move and get up, Yi Tianyun's flame swept down and burned Star-Lord Lingyun to ashes. The extreme yang flame was enough to restrain the death chi, and he was instantly burned to death. The dignified guardian of a generation was burned alive by him. He didn't even have the chance to resist before he was killed. Then he raised his head and glanced around. The cultivators below were dumbfounded. They originally wanted to see the guardian crush Yi Tianyun, but now it was easily suppressed by Yi Tianyun. Star-Lord Ning Su and the others were even more dumbfounded. They had only been distracted for a short while, and their companion had died? Even if Star-Lord Lingyun did not use his full strength, he would not be suppressed so easily, right? Chapter 1899. The mighty power once again showed everyone what true invincibility was. No matter what realm it was like empty talk in front of Yi Tianyun. With a dragon claw, everything was turned into ashes. However, Soaring Cloud Star-Lord was not crushed by the claw. He was burned to death. Anyway, the result was the same. There was no big problem. The two of you, what are you still babbling about? Hurry up and get up here to die. Yi Tianyun looked at them and sneered. After destroying the protector of your celestial terminus ancestral land, I wonder what other experts you will send. I will kill as many as they come. I will completely eradicate all the experts and patriarchs of your celestial terminus ancestral land. How dare you kill Soaring Cloud Star-Lord? I want you dead. Star-Lord Ning Su was famous for his bad temper, especially when he saw his comrade die. His anger completely exploded, and death aura soared into the sky. The storm cloud tiger star descended from the star region, causing him to instantly transform into an incomparably huge storm cloud tiger. His body was covered with dense black stripes, as though he was a tiger from hell. Scarlet light shot out of his eyes. In the next second, he pounced towards Yi Tianyun. He opened his huge mouth and bit at the five-colored Emperor Dragon's throat. If he attacked, he would definitely kill in one move. A violent force surged from the back of the storm cloud tiger. The violent force made the nearby cultivators feel as if they had lost their minds. A mere worm dares to be so arrogant. Yi Tianyun pounced on Ning Su Star Monarch, and his giant claw directly pressed Ning Su Star Monarch to the ground. Yi Tianyun's huge body slammed into the palace, and a pile of palaces was crushed into ruins. At the same time, even Ning Su Star-Lord's head, which was the storm cloud tiger's head, was crushed by his palm. With his head crushed, Ning Su Star-Lord naturally returned to his original state. He quickly shrank back to his original form. He took a few steps back. His face was pale and bloodless. Originally, there was no color to speak of. Now he was even paler. The death chi on his body was even thicker. The thicker the death chi, it meant that he was close to death. Once the death chi surrounded his body, he would be dead for sure. Why is this pressure so intense? It's like I'm facing a real Star-Lord. Star-Lord Ning Su's head was crushed, and he immediately calmed down. He didn't dare to be rash anymore. He had already unleashed his strongest attack, yet he was still no match for Yi Tianyun's palm. How was he supposed to fight? In particular, when he transformed into his unique Star Dharma body, they were all shocked. Such a high-level Star Dharma body was able to achieve such a high degree of compatibility, which was something they had not expected. At this moment, they finally realized that Great Elder Yao Yuan had gathered all of them. If the three of them didn't come out, it would be hard to deal with this frightening power. Oh, you're quite lucky. You still managed to escape. Yi Tianyun looked down at him and said, but what's the use of escaping? Looking at your current state, even if you escape, you won't be far from death. Yi Tianyun's words were not nonsense. Star Lord Ning Su's injuries were very serious. They were already people who were on the verge of death. Once they were seriously injured, no matter how much life force they absorbed, it would be useless. Before, they could fight a little, but now that they were injured, there was no way to make up for it. The fact that they could still be alive was something that the heavenly Tao could not tolerate. Relying on the slave's life force, they could at most hang on to their lives. Now that there was no way to extend their lives, escaping was just waiting for death. Damn it! Star Lord Ning Su cursed angrily. His intestines were green with regret. He didn't expect that the price of coming out would be death. He had pinned his hopes on the current Celestial Terminus Star Lord, hoping that after Celestial Terminus Star Lord broke through, he would extend their lives. Now, he didn't even need to wait for Celestial Terminus Star Lord to break through. He was almost done for. He's so strong, why didn't you say so? Star Lord Yulong's face was ashen. Of his two companions, one was dead, and the other was half-crippled. This was a heavy loss. I already said. Great Elder Yao Yuan felt wronged. He knew that Yi Tianyun was very strong, so he summoned them. Who knew that after summoning them, seeing their confident expressions, he really believed them. Scram! Star Lord Yulong slapped him, sending Great Elder Yao Yuan flying. Great Elder Yao Yuan could have dodged, but he didn't dare to. He could only receive the slap and was sent flying in front of everyone. Star Lord Yulong quickly came to Star Lord Ning Su's side and said quickly, Star Lord Ning Su, I'm afraid you can't hold on anymore. This kid is not easy to deal with. It looks like the two of us can only use our full strength, or we won't be able to suppress him. Why does a unique stellar Dharma aspect have such strong power? This is too strange. Star Lord Ning Su still found it unbelievable, but as he spoke, he released all the power in his body. Death Chi covered his body. Not only him, but Star Lord Yulong also released all his power. Death Chi immediately surrounded the surface of their bodies. This meant that they were about to use their full power, which was equivalent to releasing all their life force. Releasing all their life force would naturally allow their power to explode to an even stronger level. However, if they did this, regardless of whether Yi Tianyun lived or died, they would die. Furthermore, they would definitely die. When they saw Yi Tianyun's power, they made a prompt decision to use their full power. Otherwise, they would not be able to win this match. Rumble! The Storm Cloud Tiger Star and the Imperial Dragon Star both flickered with the strongest light. Originally, the unique stellar Dharma aspect of the five-colored Emperor Dragon could suppress their astral power. But now, it seemed like it was overtaking them. This was the new effect that could only be achieved when they used their full power and their Star Venerate cultivation. Star Lord Yulong said coldly, I did not expect things to turn out this way. It was our mistake. However, everything is over. When we use our full power, you will die for sure. Of course, it is your honor that we can die with you. Star Lord Ning Su, who was at the side, did not say anything. His eyes flickered with a cold light, and his power kept increasing. Previously, when his head exploded, he must have been filled with rage. He had a bad temper to begin with. Now that he was crushed by a junior, he must be in a terrible mood. Now it was different. He threw caution to the wind, and he would welcome his peak. When you go to hell, repent for what you have done. Star Lord Ning Su said coldly, for the prosperity of the celestial pole ancestral land, we are willing to give up everything. Chapter 1900. Yi Tianyun still maintained the body of the five-colored Emperor Dragon. His huge body towered over everything. The tyrannical five-colored dragon scales on his body were especially eye-catching here. We underestimated your strength. However, I have to say that you are still too naive. Do you really think that we will be the same as before? Star Venerate Ning Su's cloud storm tiger body was even stronger than before. His fur was even faintly red, and his berserk power was even stronger. When the two of them burst out with their full power, their cultivation reached the early stage Star Venerate level. Although it did not increase by much, it had at least increased to a cultivation that matched their realm. After the two matched, the power that burst out far surpassed the previous situation. Just by looking at the performance of the astral power, one could tell the situation. They were no longer suppressed by the five-colored Emperor Dragon's dermic body. Instead, they seemed to be fighting back. A grade 5 dermic body still had the power to be called a king. They are too arrogant. They have not reached the Star Venerate level, but they think they are the whole world? Star Venerate Yulong had turned into an imperial dragon. His huge body was not inferior to the five-colored Emperor Dragon. The imperial dragon, which was said to have the true dragon bloodline, had extraordinary power. Seeing that they had all erupted with extremely powerful strength, the previously disheartened cultivators began to howl as if they were on steroids. I knew it. The guardian god and the others did not use their full power. This is the power of a true Star Venerate. Everyone below Star Venerate is an ant. The guardian god will definitely win. This is the power of a Star Venerate. It is really too strong, especially that imperial dragon. It is said to have the true dragon bloodline and can travel through the 9 heavens. They looked at the surging aura. When it connected with the astral region, it proved that this was the power of a Star Venerate. Only by controlling the astral power of a region could one become a Star Venerate. Compared to them, Tianyun did not seem to have a strong aura. His mediocre aura represented that he was only at the level of Grandmaster Xing. Although he was a Grandmaster, there was a huge gap between him and a sovereign king. Tianyun looked at them with an indifferent expression, as if nothing could stir up any waves in his heart. I don't think I'm invincible. At least in front of you, I'm invincible. Tianyun's enormous body leapt into the air and yelled, I'll show you what it means to be invincible. Without absolute power, you are nothing but trash in front of me. The five-colored Emperor Dragon's body did not explode in size, but the five-colored dragon scales on its body began to shine with dazzling light. The unique star aspect in the sky immediately manifested a huge five-colored Emperor Dragon, soaring even higher in the starry sky. After tumbling for a few rounds, a beam of divine light instantly enveloped him, allowing him, who had transformed into his own Dharma idol, to increase his compatibility to a certain level. In an instant, all the star Dharma forms lost their luster. Even the star power that they had just released became extremely weak. To be precise, it wasn't that their star power had been weakened. It was just that the five-colored Emperor Dragon's star power was too dazzling. As a result, their star power seemed so insignificant. I am the Emperor. The aura of looking down on the world descended once again. All living things trembled in fear. The dragon's eyes, which could see through everything, merely glanced at Star Lord Yulong, and he knelt on the ground. In the end, he curled up on the ground and trembled. He no longer had any majesty. Tianyun didn't even look at him. Instead, he circulated the energy in his body and turned it into a beam of five-colored divine light that pressed down. The storm cloud tiger's eyes were filled with fear. However, in his rage, he roared and pounced towards Tianyun. Even if he died, he had to fight. Star Lord Yulong, who had originally wanted to attack, realized that he couldn't move at all. He really wanted to move, but there was a special magic in his heart that made him unable to resist. He could only curl up on the ground and tremble as he watched his comrade fight alone. However, there was no point in fighting alone. The almost perfect compatibility made the five-colored Emperor Dragon's power even more domineering. As it swung its claws, it was enveloped by its unique star aspect. If they could control one area of star power, then it could control 5 areas of star power. Under the dazzling power of the stars, it suppressed the storm cloud tiger, which had pounced over, and turned it into a pile of rubble. Star Lord Ning Su couldn't even cry out before he was completely crushed to death. This was the difference in power, and it was an absolute difference. Even if they used their full power, it seemed so insignificant in the face of Yi Tianyun's power. How can you reach such a high degree of compatibility? How can you have the power that only a Star Lord can control? Star Lord Yulong, who was prostrated on the ground, looked at him in horror. He realized that this was a little beyond his understanding. The higher the level of the star aspect, the harder it was to achieve compatibility. Now, not only was Yi Tianyun's compatibility high, but he could also control the power of the stars that only a Star Lord could control. As long as he controlled the power of the stars above, with the support of it, his power would increase greatly. For example, after they used their full power, one area of star power could increase their power by more than 2 times. 2 areas of star power could increase it by 4 times. 3 areas of star power could increase it by 6 times. Yi Tianyun directly exploded with the power of the 5 areas of star power. This required an extremely high degree of compatibility, in addition to the power of a Star Lord and above, to be able to draw out this power. This meant that Yi Tianyun could rely on the power of the 5 areas of star power to increase his power tenfold. Together with the crazy damage mode, who else could do it but him? Right now, Yi Tianyun's cultivation was still that of a star master. How could he draw out this power? Do you think you are qualified to ask this question? Yi Tianyun looked down at him. His huge dragon eyes swept over him, causing him to tremble. Damn it, how can you have such a high-grade true dragon bloodline power? Even if you have a unique star aspect, you can't have this kind of power. Star Lord Yulong didn't even have the ability to fight back. This was the saddest thing. Although the Storm Cloud Tiger couldn't defeat him, it could at least fight to the death. As for him, he couldn't move at all. He could only lie there and wait for death. You can slowly search for this question after you die. Yi Tianyun snorted coldly. He didn't show any mercy and smashed Star Lord Yulong into a meat patty. He didn't even have the ability to fight back. He was destined to die. What he loved the most was facing opponents with the dragon bloodline. As long as they had the dragon bloodline, it was basically a gift. Hence, when he saw Star Lord Yulong, he laughed in his heart. What 2-on-1? It was actually 1-on-1. After killing Star Lord Yulong, he turned to look at Great Elder Yao Yuan and said, "Finally, it's your turn." Chapter 1901. Of all the strong enemies, only First Elder Yao Yuan was left. The 3 guardian deities were gone, leaving only First Elder Yao Yuan. What else could he do? This was especially so since any one of the guardian deities could kill First Elder Yao Yuan. This meant that Yi Tianyun could easily crush First Elder Yao Yuan. When Yi Tianyun looked at First Elder Yao Yuan, the latter's heart trembled. The 3 guardian deities are dead, all dead. First Elder Yao Yuan despaired. He originally thought that the 3 guardian deities could kill Yi Tianyun. Now, it looked like he was too naive. Now, aside from him, there were no other experts in the Celestial Pole Ancestral Land who could deal with Yi Tianyun. As for the Celestial Pole Star Lord, he could not be found. This meant that Yi Tianyun could sweep through the entire Celestial Pole Ancestral Land. As long as the Celestial Pole Star Lord did not return, the Celestial Pole Ancestral Land would definitely be destroyed. I wonder what other tricks you have. Just use them. Are there any more guardian deities underground? Let them climb up. Yi Tianyun walked over to First Elder Yao Yuan step by step, staring at him with a sharp gaze to see what other tricks he had. First Elder Yao Yuan's expression turned unsightly. What other tricks did he have? He had summoned all that he could. There were only 3 guardian deities in total. He did not have any more. It was not easy to break through to the Star Venerate level. Even if there were thousands of cultivators, very few could break through. It was already pretty good to have Grandmaster Xing's cultivation. However, Grandmaster Xing's cultivation was not enough before Yi Tianyun. Unless the Celestial Pole Star Lord returned, he would not be able to resist Yi Tianyun. Even if I die in your Divine Cauldron Ancestral Land, the Celestial Pole Star Lord will definitely take revenge on you when he returns. First Elder Yao Yuan roared and turned into the lion rock dermic incarnation again, charging at Yi Tianyun. Even if he died, he would not choose to surrender. Yi Tianyun easily stomped on him, and his dermic incarnation shattered. Even the three guardian deities were crushed by Xiao Chen, not to mention this first Elder Yao Yuan. He stomped on the great Elder Yao Yuan to the ground with a single kick. The great elder was so severely injured that he could barely move. He looked like he was on the verge of death. One more kick and he would be dead. At this time, Yi Tianyun returned to his original form and landed beside great elder Yao Yuan. He looked at him and said, "Celestial Terminus Lord? Don't worry. Even if he doesn't come to me, I will definitely go to him." He wanted nothing more than for Celestial Polarity Star-Lord to appear. If he wanted to get rid of all the slave imprints in one go, he would have to kill Celestial Polarity Star-Lord. Once he killed Celestial Terminus Lord, all the slaves would be freed. There would be no need for him to free them batch by batch. They would all be freed naturally. Moreover, the only way to truly destroy the Celestial Pole Ancestral Land was to kill Celestial Pole Lord. Otherwise, as long as Celestial Pole Lord was still alive, he would definitely make a comeback. Don't worry. Celestial Terminus Star-Lord will definitely find you and avenge us. Great Elder Yao Yuan said fiercely, "I didn't expect that a monster like you would appear in the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. We lost, but we won't admit defeat just like that." Yi Tianyun stomped his foot and a halo surrounded the two of them. No one could hear what they were saying. I've said it countless times. I wasn't sent by the ancestral land of the Divine Cauldron. You just don't believe me. Yi Tianyun looked down at Great Elder Yao Yuan and said indifferently, "Before you die, I don't mind telling you this secret. I actually came from the lower realms. Do you know why I hate your Celestial Pole Ancestral Land so much? Idiot." As soon as Yi Tianyun finished speaking, he stomped his foot down and crushed Great Elder Yao Yuan's head. He had completely destroyed the Great Elder of the Celestial Pole Ancestral Land. Before he died, Great Elder Yao Yuan's eyes were filled with disbelief. He could not believe that Yi Tianyun was actually sent from the lower realms. However, he did not think that Yi Tianyun would lie to him before he died, representing that he really came from the lower realms. If he was still alive, he would definitely regret it. He did not expect such an unexpected situation to occur. If they did not design it this way, there was no if. From the moment they designed this slave imprint, it was already a foregone conclusion. Perhaps the one who appeared to destroy them was not Yi Tianyun, but another cultivator. There would always be an outcome that would be overthrown. After killing Great Elder Yao Yuan, he could obtain a pile of star energy points. Great Elder Yao Yuan's Lion Rock Star was also easily obtained. Those guardian gods from before also obtained a large amount of star energy points. However, they were all late-stage Great Master Xing and not Star-Lord level star energy points. This was a pity. Fortunately, all of these star energy points could be obtained, which surprised Yi Tianyun. For a long time, killing these cultivators had allowed one to obtain star energy. Some were somewhat useful, while others were useless. Those with lower levels were naturally useless. Level 5 guardian gods were extremely useful. Although their power could not compare to the unique star aspect, some of their abilities were still worth looking at. It's over for now. Yi Tianyun breathed a sigh of relief. Great Elder Yao Yuan had been killed, so there was almost no threat in the Celestial Terminus Ancestral Land. The biggest threat was probably the Celestial Terminus Star Lord. But where was the Celestial Terminus Star Lord? No one knew that. Great Elder Yao Yuan knew, but he was already dead. When he turned his head to look around, a group of cultivators trembled and retreated as if they were looking at a demon. All the guardian gods, including the Great Elder, were dead. Who else could stop him in the Celestial Terminus Ancestral Land? We won. We really won. After a moment of silence, Deng Feng suddenly burst into cheers. He was extremely excited about this. He had not expected that they would actually win this time. If this continued, the Celestial Terminus Ancestral Land would definitely be theirs. Amid the crazy cheers, The rest of the cultivators were filled with fear and disappointment. What should they do now? The celestial terminus ancestral land had fallen. How would they, the people, be dealt with? Would they be slaughtered, or would they be used as slaves? No matter what, they had to think pessimistically. After all, they had always enslaved these cultivators from the mortal world. Even if they did not have the power to order them, at least they were the people of the celestial terminus ancestral land. Congratulations, sir, for successfully taking the celestial terminus ancestral land. Deng Feng came over with a group of cultivators. They all knelt on the ground excitedly. They had never been so carefree, and they had never been so unyielding. They had finally won the celestial terminus ancestral land, which meant that they would be the masters of the celestial terminus ancestral land in the future. We haven't really taken it yet. We have to completely control the entire celestial terminus ancestral land before we can truly take it. Yi Tianyun said calmly, especially the celestial terminus Star Lord. He is not dead yet, let alone taking it down. Chapter 1902. Yi Tianyun did not stop. Instead, he continued to lead Deng Feng and the others, destroying all the major cities of the celestial pole ancestral land and liberating all the slaves. Since there weren't any strong opponents, it was basically a one-sided fight. There wasn't even the slightest bit of pressure. They easily conquered the cities one by one, with no difficulty at all. Hey, the situation here is a little different? When Yi Tianyun came to one of the cities with Deng Feng, he found that there were no guards. Some of the cultivators were even tied up and could not resist. When they came in, a group of people flew over from the front. As soon as they arrived, they said respectfully, "Greetings, Your Excellency. This place has been captured by us. Please take over." Drug God? Yi Tianyun looked up and down at the middle-aged man in the lead and found that he was the drug god. He had never seen the drug god in person, but he had seen the statue in the medicine god temple, so he immediately recognized him. "You know me?" The drug god was startled and a little puzzled. "Deng Feng told me about you." Yi Tianyun looked at him and smiled. "I didn't expect you to organize yourselves and choose to resist together, suppressing this city. I don't dare to accept this title at all. I used to call myself the drug god, but I am nothing here." The drug god immediately shook his head and said, "Let's not talk about this. We took advantage of the city lord's departure and immediately chose to resist and seize power, so that Your Excellency can save some effort." The drug god smiled bitterly. Recalling the past, he was really a little nostalgic, but being addressed like this was really a little embarrassing. Yi Tianyun nodded. Most of the city lords in the cities had been killed by him. Great Elder Yao Yuan summoned all the city lords, otherwise, there would not have been so many powerhouses coming. This meant that he had killed many city lords and a bunch of deacons, which naturally made this place empty. Without these people who could command them, they could naturally choose to counterattack. "Very well, then I will trouble you. I will remove the slave mark for you." Yi Tianyun quickly summoned the five-color Emperor Dragon's Dharma form and removed the slave mark for everyone. After removing the slave imprint, they were all pleasantly surprised. They had finally gotten rid of this damned slave imprint. "The city here will be managed by you." Yi Tianyun directly appointed the drug god as the manager. Every city needed a manager, otherwise, it would be easy to cause chaos. There were so many cultivators in the lower realm. Without a leader, it would be easy for things to go haywire. "Thank you, my lord. I will definitely take good care of this city." The drug god cupped his fists in gratitude. He was very familiar with the city, so it was best for him to manage it. Choosing to resist was also his idea. He was decisive. If he could resist, he would resist immediately. Yi Tianyun nodded and did not say anything else. Seeing that the drug god was fine, he was relieved. No matter what, he was from his hometown. It would be best if he could survive. Leaving him in charge of this place was even more reassuring. Then, he continued to lead a group of cultivators to kill their way into other cities. There were many cities in the ancestral land of the celestial terminus. Since they couldn't find Celestial Terminus Lord, they could only occupy the cities one by one. Moreover, even if they killed Celestial Terminus Lord, they still needed to take over the cities one by one. Otherwise, there would be chaos. There were so many cultivators in the lower realm here. If they didn't manage it well, there would be chaos. He couldn't possibly annihilate these elders and ignore everything else, right? Instead, he wanted to control the entire ancestral land of the Celestial Terminus as a springboard for this world. He didn't know how terrifying this world was. At the very least, he had to control this area before exploring it. With resources in hand, everything was peaceful. However, Celestial Terminus Lord hadn't been killed yet, so there was no such thing as peace. Since no one stopped them, they could easily control these main cities. It didn't take long for all the main cities to be occupied. They were occupied, but the slaves were not completely liberated. After all, in addition to these main cities, there were many slaves owned by some families or some private individuals. This was not something that Yi Tianyun could control. He couldn't liberate them one by one. If he liberated them in batches, it would take a long time. The best way was still to kill Celestial Terminus Lord. Sir, the situation in Fallen Cloud City is good. Many of the citizens are calm and won't resist. Sir, the situation in Skyfall City is also stable. The citizens are also in good condition. There are no signs of resistance at the moment. Sir, in the main hall, Yi Tianyun sat in the highest position like a monarch, listening to their reports one by one. They were all temporary city lords. Their cultivation was not weak. They were all star masters and even star grandmasters. Without some strength, these cultivators wouldn't obey. Sir, why should we be so polite to them? Back then, they weren't polite at all. Even if they didn't do anything to us, they kept making us suffer all kinds of insults. One of them couldn't help but stand up and say, "In my opinion, they should be demoted to slaves and serve us." I think so too. What's the point of appeasing them? Thinking back to when we were attacked and insulted by them, I couldn't do anything. Now, I feel disgusted when I see them. After one person stood up, a second and a third person stood up. The different voices were different from the reports of the city lords. They wanted to let those guys have a taste of being slaves. The anger in the depths of their eyes wouldn't be extinguished so easily. Some of them wished that they could massacre the entire city and kill every single one of them. The city lords looked at Yi Tianyun. They had received orders to appease the citizens and couldn't do anything to them. Although their subordinates complained, they could only carry out the orders. Not only did they have to stabilize the situation of the local cultivators, but they also had to stabilize the situation of their subordinates. It had to be said that both sides were extremely difficult. In particular, their subordinates hated the Celestial Terminus ancestral land to the bone and couldn't wait to be destroyed. If it weren't for Yi Tianyun's authority, they would really want to kill them. Yi Tianyun looked at them indifferently and asked, "Are there more local cultivators in the Celestial Terminus ancestral land or more from the lower worlds? Who can answer this question?" He didn't directly answer their question. Instead, he asked them a question. In fact, he already knew this question would happen. How could he easily appease his anger after being enslaved for so long? Chapter 1903. They didn't understand Yi Tianyun's question, but someone still stood up and answered. "There are more local cultivators," a temporary city lord answered without hesitation. "How many times more?" Yi Tianyun asked again. "Dozens of times more than us, maybe even 100 times more." The temporary city lord answered. "There were too many local cultivators. Because the cultivators from the lower realm only chose the elites to come up, there couldn't be a lot of them. Because they were the elites, they could stand firm." "Well, what if we kill them crazily? What choice will they make?" Yi Tianyun asked again. "Resist?" The temporary city lord answered. After answering, he was suddenly stunned. Not only him, but the other cultivators were also stunned. In an instant, they immediately realized what Yi Tianyun wanted to say. "Yes, resist." Yi Tianyun held his chin and looked at them indifferently. Their numbers are so many times more than ours. Once they resist, it will be quite terrifying. They don't resist now mainly because they are afraid of me and our Master Xing. But if they are forced into a corner, they will resist regardless of everything. When the time comes, there will be a lot of them. Maybe they will run to other forces if we are not careful. Or if they fight with us to the death, even if we win, the result will be extremely tragic. Or in other words, we might lose in the end. Yi Tianyun gently pointed at them, and they immediately came to their senses. They shivered fiercely and felt that it was very scary. They had been blinded by anger and hadn't thought about this problem for a while. They only wanted to take revenge on the celestial pole ancestral land. Thinking about it carefully, some things weren't so simple. If they only wanted to die, it was easy. They could casually rush over and kill a few people, and then die in the hands of the other party. However, if they massacred the entire celestial core ancestral land, then that would be too exaggerated. There were so many of them, and not only would it be extremely difficult to kill them, once they rebounded, the consequences would be unimaginable. I know what you're thinking, but many of them haven't enslaved anything. It's true that they look down on you, but if you want to take revenge on them, isn't the best way to make them reproduce with you? Yi Tianyun smiled faintly and said, assimilating them is the best revenge. Many of the temporary city lords wiped the cold sweat off their foreheads. When they thought of this, they felt a little scared. However, there were also many who were prepared to die, their eyes still filled with hatred. Everyone's situation was different, and there were many who were selfish. To put it bluntly, he was willing to sacrifice everyone but his own family. I know that some of you can't quell your anger, so I give you the right to kill. When you were slaves, if anyone provoked you or did anything to you, feel free to take revenge. Tianyun smiled coldly and said, not to mention that it's hard for you to swallow this anger, even I won't. In fact, I support you in doing this. You should be responsible for your own mistakes. As soon as he said this, a murderous intent shot out of their eyes, but more of it was surprise. They thought that Yi Tianyun would forcibly suppress their thoughts and stop them from having such thoughts. Now it seemed that they had thought too little. Thank you, sir. They knelt down one by one, their eyes red, and one of them shouted. They killed my friends, and I really can't swallow this anger. I just need to kill those enemies, and I will not hurt the innocent. They killed my cultivation partner and humiliated her. Even if I have to die, I will take my revenge. I couldn't take revenge because of the slave mark, but now that it's gone, I want to take revenge. I think so too. I don't want to vent my anger on all the cultivators, but some hatred must be avenged. Their eyes were full of anger, not because they wanted to kill the innocent, but because they wanted to take revenge on the enemies who caused them pain. Looking at their situation, if Yi Tianyun didn't agree with them, they would probably sneak away to kill their enemies. Some hatred must be avenged, even if they had to fight against the whole world. Not to mention them, even Yi Tianyun would do this. Of course I know this, so I let you deal with it, and we will be your backup. Let them know what it means to pay blood for blood. Yi Tianyun looked at them with burning eyes and said, these words can also be applied to other companions. Remember, you can take revenge, but you can't kill the innocent. If we kill the innocent, what's the difference between us and the higher-ups of the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land? Although Yi Tianyun was not a good person, he was not a heinous bad person. In many cases, things would go in the opposite direction when they reached an extreme, so they should not go too far. Everyone nodded. This point was right. If they killed the innocent, what was the difference between them and the Empyrean Terminus ancestral land? At that time, they would become the masters of this place, and the local cultivators would be squeezed. At that time, there might be a second Yi Tianyun, who would definitely punish them. Peaceful coexistence was the best choice. Although I suggest peaceful coexistence, if some people resist strongly, then don't be lenient, Yi Tianyun said in a cold tone. When it's time to be tough, don't be lenient. Yi Tianyun's policy was very clear, so they nodded repeatedly and knew what they should do. With a few words, not only did he wake them up, but he also drew them to his side. In many cases, it was better to let them go. Their hatred must be avenged, and after that, they would naturally be very loyal to him. Here, he did not have any trusted subordinates, so he could only slowly cultivate them. However, the things here had just begun, and there were still many things to unfold. But all of this was just the beginning. Such a large Empyrean terminus ancestral land needed to be managed. The cultivators who were originally slaves in the mortal world suddenly became the masters, and there must be many loopholes. However, he was already prepared to deal with it. No matter what, he had to stabilize the situation here, and absolutely no mistakes could be made. If only they stayed here. Yi Tianyun sighed deeply. He trusted his relatives and his capable subordinates the most, but unfortunately, they stayed in the mortal world. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.